You are live.
Thank you, Maria. Good evening and welcome to the virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission. The Ohio legislature passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to conduct virtual meetings. We appreciate this ability to maintain our continuity of government and will be holding our meetings online and live streaming on YouTube until further notice. You can access the live stream on the city's website. We welcome your comments on cases. In order to submit any questions or comments during the meeting, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. Your questions and comments will be relayed to the commission by the meeting moderator. Please provide a valid name and address when submitting your comments, and please refrain from making any inappropriate comments. We want to accommodate public participation and comments to the greatest extent possible, and we certainly appreciate your patience. Ms. Beal, will you please call roll?
Ms. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Schneer?
Here.
Mr. Fishman?
Here.
Ms. Call?
Here.
Mr. Supalak?
Here.
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
And Ms. Kennedy's absent.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. And we excuse Ms. Kennedy this evening. She had other engagements she needed to attend to. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We will pause for a moment as the flag is displayed. Those commission members who have your video on, please turn your video off and your audio on so that they can join us. I
Pledge allegiance
To
to
the
the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you for joining us in that pledge. We would like to now accept the documents for tonight's meeting and approval of minutes. So do I have a motion to accept the documents into the record and to approve the minutes from the August 6th and the August 20th meetings?
So move.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Grimes?
Yes.
Mr. Supalak?
Yes.
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes,
Mr. Schneer?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council when rezoning and platting of property are under consideration. In such cases, City Council will receive recommendations from the Commission. In other cases, the Commission has the final decision-making responsibility. Anyone who intends to address the Commission on any of these administrative cases must be sworn in. The agenda order is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. The rules and regulations of the Planning and Zoning Commission state that no new agenda items are to be introduced after 10:30 p.m. We have two cases tonight eligible for the consent agenda. We have two cases tonight eligible for the consent agenda this evening. Case number 2, case 20-037, and case 3, 20-129, both of which are conditional use cases. Does anyone wish to pull either of these off of the consent agenda? Seeing no action, they will remain on the consent agenda. So at this time, we would like to swear in witness and staff. So those of you who intend to address the commission, can you please turn your video and your audio on at this time? Anyone intending to address the commission on any cases this evening, please raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this commission?
I do.
I do.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I need a motion to accept, or is that covered in our documentation? Legal, making sure T's are crossed.
We would prefer a motion.
So moved.
I have
Second.
a first and a second. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Schneier,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Now on to our tabled case. We have case number 1, Chase Bank 20-107 MSP, located at 6515 Sawmill Road, master sign plan. This application is a request for a deviation from the code to permit 3 building-mounted signs and 1 monument sign for approximately 4,100 square foot, 1-story bank. The 0.84 acre site is northwest of the intersection of Sawmill Road and Banker Drive and zone Bridge Street District Sawmill Center neighborhood. Mr. Halschel, you have our case presentation this evening?
I do.
Hey, Zach, forgive me before you get started. So I'm just watching the participant count, and we just went through a consent agenda for two of the cases. I don't necessarily see people dropping out. So I'm wondering if first we should just articulate to the people who are here for those cases what just happened to their cases.
So Claudia, who do we have representative for you? You've written the salon and the Dublin Salon. Sorry, we're getting back on somebody's audio. Mark, I think, thank you.
Certainly. We did not have applicants here tonight for the UFIT case. They had also other obligations. And then Abby Clabeau is the one that was with the Dublin Salon case. So Abby, your case got approved and you are certainly able to move forward with your building improvements and your occupancy. So you do no longer have to stay on this virtual meeting here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you all
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Sure.
So
Great night.
Abby, thank you for joining with us this evening. It is certainly good to see your face, even though we can't meet in person. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing Dublin Salon here very, very quickly. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Take care.
thanks all. Obviously, it would have been a shame on us had we let you guys sit around all night.
Oh, we
Wait
appreciate
for
it.
something else.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Take care.
Zach, back to you.
Good catch, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Mark. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good evening. This is an application for review and approval of a master sign plan. Master sign plans allow for applicants to have some flexibility from any sign regulations that are within their district. In this case, it would be the Bridge Street District. Master sign plans allow for that variation from number of signs, height of signs, size of signs, but also encourages creativity throughout the sign plan that the applicant would propose. Following approval of this application, or should this application receive approval tonight, the applicant would be able to move forward to Building Standards Department for their sign permits. This site is no stranger to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This site is located at the northwest of the intersection of Sawmill Road and Banker Drive. In August of 2020, the vacant Boston Market site was approved for redevelopment for the Chase Bank facility that will be located on this site. The master sign plan was considered with that application. However, the applicant decided to table the matter to come back with this proposal tonight. To give you some background to what is permitted per code with this application, because the site is located at the intersection of 2 streets and has 2 street frontages, they are permitted 2 wall signs and 2 ground signs per the Bridge Street sign code requirements. These 2 signs, or these 4 signs, would have to be located along Banker Drive and Sawmill Road. one of each on each facade, on each frontage. The wall signs are permitted to be half square foot per linear foot of facade with a maximum of 50 feet in square footage, with 15 feet in height being the maximum for the wall sign. And the two ground signs would have to be 24 square feet in maximum size each, with an 8-foot setback from the right of way and 8 feet in height. Apologies, I'm having a little delay here. There we go. Shown on the screen are the site plans from the previous proposal in August and what is revised today. The previous proposal included 3 wall signs and 1 window transom sign. The revised proposal has eliminated the transom sign and the wall sign on the north elevation. And instead, the applicant is proposing a monument sign, which is signaled by E4 on the right photo, and the E3 would be a canopy sign. Shown on the screen are the previously proposed wall signs for the east and south elevations. If you may remember, the applicant did propose 3 wall signs that were similar in size and design. All 3 of these signs were approximately 37 square feet in size. All were halo illuminated channel letters with the Chase blue octagon logo and were constructed of aluminum. Shown on the screen are the revised proposed wall signs. The east elevation, the applicant did change this sign to the blue Chase logo, and it is 25 square feet in size. It does sit 18 feet 10 inches in height to the top of the sign. It will also be constructed of aluminum and will be internally illuminated instead of halo illuminated with blue LED lights. On the south elevation, which faces Banker Drive, the applicant is proposing a similar sign to what was there originally, but it is smaller. It is 20.6 feet in size. It is 14 feet 6 inches in height to the top of the sign, also constructed of aluminum and will be internally lit. As shown on the screen are the previously proposed signs in August. The north elevation was one of the 37 square foot wall signs that was seen previously. And the west elevation included the approximately 5 square foot transom window sign with final letters and similar design to the wall signs. With this current proposal, the applicant has decided to include a canopy sign on the west elevation, which faces the parking lot. It should be noted that canopy signs are only permitted within the Bridge Street District with a master sign plan. However, there have been multiple canopy signs approved with master sign plans throughout the district, including Piata just south of the site and State Bank, which is located on 161. The canopy sign is approximately 37 square feet in size and 13 feet 7.5 inches in height to the top of the sign. It is also constructed of aluminum and is internally lit, and it'll be located just over the entrance on that west elevation. The applicant has removed any signage on that north elevation, which will be in lieu of a monument sign on the northeast portion of the site. With this application, the applicant has included and provided building illuminations with the signage to enhance the package. The applicant is proposing blue linear downlights under the roof cornice of the south, east, and west elevations. As you can see on the screen, the building will be illuminated at night, and this is an illustration of what that would look like. As well as at the southeast corner of the building, they are proposing to illuminate the jewel box structure, which is the aluminum panel structure, which you can see on the screen. That will be lit from the inside of the building. Planning is requiring that the applicant provide staff with a photometric plan and lighting details, as those were not provided with this application. However, staff is comfortable with them providing them prior to their sign permit. And new to this application is the proposed ground sign, which can be shown on the screen. This sign the plans did show 24 square feet in size. The sign face itself is 6 square feet, and it'll have an aluminum base clad in brick masonry that will match the north elevation of the building. It is an aluminum cabinet, and the letters will be acrylic with LED illumination from the inside of the monument sign. Planning staff has reviewed this application to all applicable master sign plan criteria and are recommending approval with one condition, that the applicant continue to work with staff with photometric plan and lighting details prior to submittal of a sign permit. If the commission has any questions for staff, I'm happy to answer them. If not, the applicant is here to address the changes and revisions that they have made to their plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. So from Chase, who do we have from the applicant to speak to us this evening?
Hi, this is Jennifer Carr.
Hello, how are
Jennifer Carr. Hi, good, thank you.
Welcome, Jennifer. Do you have a presentation in addition to Zach's, or are you here to answer questions? Do you have anything that you would like to discuss with the commission before we get to questions and that sort of thing?
I just wanted to, I had some comments just to address some of the changes. Zach did a great job presenting what we did before and what we're proposing now. We did take into consideration comments from before, from the August meeting, and we added the architectural lighting on the building. As he showed, the intent there is to highlight that southeast corner to help with the gateway effect to that Bridge Park area. The jewel box will glow at night, and the linear blue light line of the light I thought would help highlight the building on that corner. The octagon that we're showing on the east elevation, we felt like that would be a beacon to kind of to help elevate the presence on that corner with the gateway effect that we were looking for. And we have it over the door as a second entrance to any pedestrian customers that can see the building and go in through that door. The south elevation, we did lower that from an 18-inch letter set to, or a 24-inch letter set to an 18-inch letter set to help fit that elevation a little bit more better. For the west elevation with the canopy letter set, we kind of felt like that was important with the Piata effect, the pin zones effect that's in the area. And, you know, we felt like those three things that we did that were different on the building gives us the effect, and it still falls within our national branding standards. The ground sign that we were proposing on the north side of the plan, again, that's just helping with the southbound traffic to turn into our site from Sawmill Road. That was a request that we would like to have proposed. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer. At this time, Commission, looking to you, Mark. Want to kick us off? Do you have any questions or feedback?
I don't have questions. I'm just going to jump to comments. One, the sort of running lights around the building are nice. I don't think we fully appreciate, even in this, right? We see flat elevations, but that is going to wrap around the building on that south end. That'll be really, really nice, Jennifer. Kudos. Right? Yeah. The canopy sign is also great. I very much appreciate it. The package in general is really nice. Kudos across the board. I do want to call out one thing. So there's a canopy above the west door on your drawing, and I don't know what other representation is here. I know how these things go. This is a signage package. This is not the building elevations per se, but there was a stretch where that canopy, that one right there on the top drawing, extended this full length over, right, like it's shown here. And then the second time this set of drawings came in, that canopy stopped. It didn't go as far. Right now in your drawing, it's going again that far. Again, I know it's not the signage package, that's more the building elevation, but if that canopy extension returned, that's also a good thing. It's a nice touch.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Subelak. As it looks like we're going to be doing questions and comments at the same time, I'd like to pause and ask staff if we've received any public comment on this item.
We have not received any public comment on this item.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claudia. Okay, going back to the commission, Mr. Grimes.
I think it's beautiful. I love the changes. As Mark said, the color along the roof lines are great. I think once this thing is finished, you'll probably want to do the same thing to the Franz Road branch. Make it look as outstanding as this one. Thank you for this. Appreciate it.
And the perimeter one. All right, Mr. Fishman, you're up next.
I echo the first two commissioners. I think they listen to us, and I really appreciate that. So I think it looks great.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneer.
A big ditto. I echo the other sentiments, and I'm actually excited to see how the blue light works out. I think that's going to be very fun on Sawmill.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Ms. Fox. You're still muted.
I'm
Ms.
sorry, done mute. I agree. I noticed some even nuanced changes as well. So I have a couple questions. Did the transom window then be modified? Is it gone now? You don't have a transom above the, I think it's the east elevation, or maybe it's the west elevation. Is that gone now, Jennifer?
Yes, Tim, we removed that based on the signs that we're showing.
Right. I think that's great. And also I noticed, are the canopies now in a different color, a darker color? They're shaded differently on this drawing I have versus a sort of a light gray that's on the previous ones. Did you? It's a nice touch. I just wondered if that is an actual change or that's just the drawing copies.
That's a good question. Tim, did we change that to omit the darker?
Correct. Yeah, the intent was to go back to the elongated canopy and the darker finish to kind of bring that line horizontally. And the signage package as presented in front of you is the option that we're proceeding forward with pending approval.
Yes, I really like the fact that you did that. And I'm also wondering, on the jewel box, did you also extend some of those little projections out from the windows, or are they pretty tight to the window?
The jewel box will be a curtain wall, so it does have a little bit of a shadow line to it.
Yeah.
In the night rendering, we've added the blue interior light. There's some lighting inside that will emphasize that corner element.
I really think, considering that Chase has its constrictions about how much you can do with signage, what you did with the exterior of the building with the blue lights and the up and down feature, and then adding the gateway art on the corner, I think it is a jewel box. It really is, and I'm really, really happy with the sign package.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. And I will just conclude as the 6th of 6. I think it's beautiful. For Chase and for staff, if you could just highlight, since we do have, of course, the live stream, highlight the difference because we're looking at a two-dimensional image for that canopy sign. I just want to highlight that that's not our normal, slap something on the side of a wall and it's a sign. So Zach or Jennifer, if you want to field this one, can you speak to the definition of a canopy sign and how those channel letters actually are mounted so that people really get an understanding as to what that looks like, since we are just looking at this flat image?
Zach, do you want me to take how we are to do it, or the typical way we do it is you'll have the canopy, and then you'll have what we call a raceway or a mounted box on top of the canopy, and then the letters would be attached to that raceway, and it would be out to the end of the canopy. So you'll have the depth between the end of the letters and the building.
And Jennifer, do you happen to know, or Tim, do you happen to know that depth, what that depth is away from the building, just so we can get some perspective on the difference between that and a wall-mounted sign?
I don't, so a wall-mounted sign would be flush. Right. Directly onto the building.
It looks like,
Echoing.
sorry, it looks like it's 30 inches or 3 feet in that range. Might be pushing up on 4.
So I just wanted to highlight that because the images don't really showcase those canopy signs. So I wanted to highlight that for everyone so that we're considering this as a whole. Are there any other questions or comment? Ms. Fox?
Just one other, which I think is really important to note. Originally, Chase had asked for 115, almost 115 and a half square foot of signs. Now, when you talk about the 6-foot ground sign, you have a total of 90 square foot. But honestly, even though you have less square foot of signage, you have much more noticeable of a building. The lighting and the package that you put together has created such a attractive element to make you notice that Chase is there, that you don't need to do it in signs. And I think that's what's fascinating about what you've come up with. You've actually done it with a lot of other elements, the lighting elements, the jewel box. You created signage that doesn't have to have letters. I think that's what's really wonderful about this. So I really appreciate the work you put into it.
And piggybacking off of Jane's comments, additionally, master sign plans, the reason that we have these is because they do deviate slightly from what is allowed in just base code. So we're trading a sign for an additional wall sign, which, given the entire package, we're looking at this from a holistic perspective. And we want to make sure that we're upfront and saying we acknowledge that we're trading this a wall sign, giving a wall sign for a ground sign. But the overall package, this branding package, the blue lights extend the branding awareness on the building because everyone knows that Chase's color is blue. Everyone knows that Chase's logo, the little octagon on the side, is Chase. And so even though it is less overall signage, to Jane's point, there is more brand awareness on the building. And at the same time, the City of Dublin is getting an incredibly attractive building that highlights and raises the bar for anyone else who comes into the city. So thank you very much for listening to our comments the last time. And we are certainly looking forward to having this beautiful Chase building in the place of an existing Boston Market. And we wish you all the success that could possibly be had. So thank you very much. At this point in time, I'd like to turn it back to the commission and I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the master sign.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Supalack. Ms. Beal?
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Supalack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Well, again, congratulations and thank you very much. And please let us know if we can do anything. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
All right. So our next case, Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen, case number 20-123 AFDP, located at 5150 Tuttle Crossing Boulevard, amended final development plan. This application is a request for exterior modification to an existing drive-through restaurant building. The 1.37 acre site is northwest of the intersection of Tuttle Crossing Boulevard and Bradenton Avenue and is zoned Planned Unit Development District Subarea 1. At this time, Nikki, I'll give you a moment to get set up. Nicole Martin has our case presentation tonight, so thank you very much. And when you are ready, we are ready for you.
Thank you. Good evening. As mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of an amended final development plan. The amended final development plan is the fourth and optional step in the planned unit development process. The amended final development plan allows for modifications over time, particularly when combined with minor text modifications, as is before the commission this evening. The site is located at the intersection of Tuttle Crossing Boulevard and Bradenton Avenue and is located within the I-270 Tuttle Road Planned Commerce District, subarea A1. This site was originally developed in 1993 and originally zoned in 1989. This site, along with the 5 acres you see there, including Bob Evans and McDonald's, was rezoned to allow for retail uses, and this site was subsequently developed with a Boston Market. These are the existing site conditions. The site is presently vacant as Boston Market has been out of business. You'll notice here the brick facades as well as the pitched standing seam roof. This is the west elevation where the existing drive-through is and is proposed to remain, as well as the dumpster location. The applicant has worked with staff over the last few months to modify the prototypical Popeyes architecture to be responsive to this location within the city of Dublin, recognizing the established character of this planned commerce district. While the proposal does contain some of the elements, you'll notice that the bright teal shutters are not proposed, and also the modern parapet roofs are not proposed. So with this application, there are both site and building modifications. The site is proposed to remain largely the same. The site layout, access, and circulation are retained. With this application, the parking lot is being sealed and striped. The site was originally developed in 1993 with 62 parking spaces, where 66 parking spaces would have been required for a restaurant. The applicant is proposing, with the restriping, a total of 60 parking spaces. Staff is conditioning that they provide 61 spaces, which would be 62 minus 1 space for a dumpster expansion. The expanded dumpster is architecturally compatible with the building and allows for recycling, which was not considered in 1993. The applicant is also proposing to install new bronze light fixtures on top of the existing light poles. Staff is conditioning that the light poles be painted bronze to match the new fixtures. Staff is also conditioning that a photometric plan be provided. The applicant did provide that photometric plan today, although staff has not had an opportunity to review it. Finally, you'll note a number of landscape updates are being proposed as part of this application. With the vacancy left by Boston Market, unfortunately, many of the trees and shrubs on the site have not fared well over time. Luckily, with these modifications, the landscape will be revived. The second aspect of this application are building modifications. As mentioned, the brick facades and pitched roof will be retained. The IFAS will be repaired and painted. The standing seam roof will be painted, and a new entry feature with accents are proposed. So in detail, here you can see the brick facade with the repaired IFAS band and gooseneck fixtures. A new architectural entry feature is proposed with a vertical Nichiha panel in a cedar color. The standing seam metal roof is proposed to be painted black. The development text does require natural materials, although does allow for select accent colors. The applicant is proposing in key areas, including the front facade and the drive-through, red metal canopies with black tiebacks. These are the east and west elevations. The west elevation faces Bob Evans and is where the drive-through is located, and the east elevation faces Bradenton Avenue. This site is eligible for a total of 2 signs. The applicant is proposing a ground sign which utilizes the existing monument along Tuttle Crossing Boulevard and a wall sign facing Bradenton. The wall sign is permitted to be up to 80 square feet in size. However, due to the architectural area provided for a sign, the proposed sign is 33 square feet in size and mounted at less than 15 feet in height, which meets all code requirements. Additionally, the ground sign is proposed to be 16 square feet in size and is mounted to a 49 square foot brick monument. With these updates, the monument will be cleaned and new landscaping will be installed. Finally, the applicant is seeking a text modification for approval of an electronic menu board. The commission may recall in 2018, McDonald's located in sub-area A4 on Tuttle Crossing Boulevard was approved for an electronic menu board. Staff has written the proposed text modification to incorporate all the conditions of approval applied to the McDonald's site. This proposed menu board is 27 square feet in size. That does not include the proposed topper or extender. Staff is conditioning that those items be eliminated from the proposed menu board. With that, the first text modification is for parking to memorialize the existing condition of the site and to allow for a total of 61 parking spaces dimensioned at 9 feet in width by 18 feet in length. The second modification, as mentioned, is for the menu board with those 7 requirements. Staff is recommending approval of this amended final development plan with 2 text modifications. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is
Thank you, Nikki. And from the applicant, Casey, is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Wonderful. Mr. Kist, welcome. At this time, do you have a presentation or any conversation that you would like for us before we go into questions?
No, I think you captured our changes very well. Are you guys getting a lot of feedback as well? Sorry about that. I've read through Nikki's comments and we appreciate her working with us. And we've got no problem with the modifications that have been recommended to our application.
Thank you, Mr. Kist. Staff, has any public comment been received on this item?
There's been no public comment submitted for this application.
Thank you, Ms. All right, Commission, looking to you. Ms. Fox, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for staff, and I visited the site. I have a concern that the pavement said in the planning report that it was just going to be resealed, but it is in such deplorable condition that resealing, I'm not sure that's going to do the trick on that pavement.
We've actually revisited that since we've kind of dug in out there, and my paver gave me a quote to fill the potholes and seal and stripe, and he also gave me a quote to do a complete mill and repave. And I think we're going to actually, the cost was almost 50% to repair it. So I think ultimately we are going to do a complete mill and repave of the entire site.
I would really like to condition that because it has such a absolutely tired look. I know you're addressing the landscape, which is essential. It looks like an abandoned, bombed out place. It
really does.
You're going to bring some energy to the site. So I would want that to be a condition that would be replaced. This is it's informal. So those are my suggestions. I would push for that down the road. As I drove by, one of the things that I think is important along Tuttle, because it's happening along Sawmill, is creating a sense of vibrancy and walkability. And I know that's not something that's happened along Tuttle right now, but your outdoor seating area, I thought that they would be important to be able to maintain an outdoor seating area that was inviting. And right now, a couple of concrete picnic tables are there, so there was some outdoor seating, but I didn't see anything in your plan that that showed any outdoor seating. Is that something that you'll be doing?
Typically, our Popeyes do not have outdoor seating associated with them. This location could be an exception. Typically, in areas that we're in, it's more closer to high traffic roads. But that is we definitely have the area there to accommodate that, and it's something that we definitely consider.
I think as we're developing Franz Road and we're trying to bring some energy back along all the perimeter edges of the city, it would be something I would encourage you to do. It's amazing, especially in this pandemic, as we see people eating outside, to be able to offer that option is really important, I think. And I think that we're going to ask that of almost every restaurant, almost everybody that comes through. It just creates an energy on the street that I think is always going to be something that's timeless in a way. And I was really struggling with the architecture and the colors of this. I like, so did you look at doing anything to kind of break up or to highlight the massing? It seems like it's very strong, black line across the top, white line on the panel. I know we have some red canopies to kind of maybe make the brick look a little bit more interesting. Did you give any? Were there any other options there? It seems as if you did the front door, and that's nice. I'm just wondering if you had any other thoughts on.
I guess when we went through the zoning text from the original PUD for that sub area, in working with staff, I think we were under the impression that we were kind of limited with what we could do with the existing brick, and then as well with the pitched roof that I think we're going to end up ultimately leaving that and just painting it black. So I guess from an architectural standpoint, I think we thought we were kind of limited with our options that we could do on that building.
I would just add on to that. That is the direction that staff gave the applicant regarding that brick facade. We felt it important that be retained. The brick facade does have a soldier course detail through it. So in addition to those canopies, there is a bit of detailing.
I'm sorry, Nicole, repeat the part about advised to keep the brick intact, or advised?
Correct, yes.
Okay, got it.
I kind of like the turquoise shutters personally. I thought they might have been nice, on the side of the brick to give that little Louisiana flavor. The canopies, I understand that's the new look of Popeyes. It seems like that's the new remodel look. I prefer a softer canopy, but
yeah, some background. This is the image that was part of the package. That is the prototype Popeyes that I think there's only been 2 developed in the country so far. So these are it's something that we're trying to wrap our.
Yeah, it's very hard to retrofit an existing building to try to look something like that, because then it just looks like you painted a building and put some flat canopies. So my preference is that you take the building that you have and you make the best look you can for Popeyes out of that, using the elements that identify your brand. So I prefer a little softer canopy. I'm not crazy about that flat red line that goes across, but I can't design from the desk, nor should I. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Fishman, do you want to go next?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I don't really have much comment at this point. I think they've done a pretty good conversion, considering what the building looked like. I would echo and say that we should definitely redo that parking lot. It really looks bad, and so that's a done deal. So that's no problem. And the landscaping is really shabby. I hope they're not going to just supplement that landscaping. I hope they're going to completely redesign that. Is that what I understand, Mr. Guy?
We have committed to working with the staff landscape architect to come out and it's kind of so overgrown and kind of out of date that we're just going to, we've committed to the original landscape plan and then also augmenting that to make it look a lot fresher than it is. I think a lot of trees out there, I don't know if you've seen, are actually dying and have in the last few weeks started to come down. So I think it's going to involve just kind of getting out there and seeing what makes the most sense.
Okay, great.
And there is one that's right there on the corner that was knocked down. So it was completely horizontal.
Yeah, it looks pretty rough. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, that's the only comment I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneer.
I had a question for staff, just from my own understanding. The topper and extension on the menu board were eliminated. That was the recommendation? What was the background on that?
Yeah, so menu boards have been discussed extensively in recent history, primarily in regards to McDonald's that redid all of their menu boards at the 3 locations in Dublin. The Planning Commission previously prohibited the use of pre-browse menus or basically additional menus beyond the 32 square feet allotted. The plan was not fully dimensioned, but as the primary menu board is 27 square feet, it's safe to assume that with the extraneous items, it would exceed that 32 square feet.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Mr. Schneer, did you have anything else?
No, it's personally, it's something I would want to revisit at a later time. I think there's a way to harmonize the utility of those menu boards and the technology with, with the look and feel that we want as well. But if it's okay with the applicant that they're gone, we can move on.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Staff, if you could take that away in some of our working sessions, if we could bring that back to at least get a refresher course in the menu boards. A couple of us on the Planning Commission, I think actually the 4 of us, the majority of us, have not seen menu boards at least in the last year and a half or so. So I think it'd be a good refresher item. Moving on, Mr. Grimes.
Yeah, that parking lot looks pretty rough. I echo that. Yeah, on the landscaping, you got a lot of dead stuff around. It does need a lot of freshening. With the extensive mounding around on it, it's make it pretty hard to do too much walkability within the size of that lot. So it is what it is, I think, in that regard. On the menu board, the only thing I would add to that is, everybody's got a phone or a pad or whatever. They know everything about that restaurant while they're waiting in line. I don't know how much you need to add or extend to the existing menu boards. That's my 2 cents on that. Yeah, I like the Louisiana feel, the shutters. I think that's an attractive point of their brand from what I've seen in some of their color schemes. Just a note to staff on the number of parking spots. I don't know that, this particular business needs 60 or 40 or 70 when they're busy, but has there ever been a thought of, having subcompact parking spots? If you did 8, 9 or 9, 8, feet width for subcompacts, if you were really looking to squeeze in, that extra spot if it was needed, depending on the type of business. I don't know if that's, of course, then you start getting into having to add all the signage saying this is a subcompact spot, then now you're getting into another issue. But I just thought that was a way of a lot of smaller cars are out there now, and maybe that's a way to improve the parking plan if it was a push on that issue in particular. That's just something that I wanted to mention. But I welcome this restaurant to the area, and I think it would be a compliment to what's going on in that area and an alternative food type. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. I just want to pause for a moment to discuss parking. So, Nikki, if I remember correctly, it was 66 are required for this application, 62 were in the previous agreement, and the recommendation is 61. Is that all my numbers accurate? So, Mr. Kist, coming from a business perspective, does 61 meet your needs? Does it exceed your needs? Coming from the business perspective, what are your thoughts on just the count at 61?
This will have the most parking spots of any Popeyes that we have.
And thank you. That's really what I was getting to. Do you have numbers from previous Popeyes restaurants?
The majority of so we have 8 stores. Most of them are in the city of Columbus, and I did look it up when I saw the staff report just to kind of get an idea. And I mean, I forget how big this site is, Nikki, if it's 1.2 acres or so.
1.37.
So most of our stores are on 3/4 of an acre, and they're the same square footage. So we average about 42 to 45 parking spots. So I didn't know if that calculation, when they came up with the 62 originally, is the same calculation that's used now for fast food or for drive-through applications, or if that's something that was just around in 1993.
Yeah. So, Mr. Kist, that perfectly segued into the next conversation. So, Nikki.
Well, I figured that, so that's why I went there for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Nikki, looking back to you, you mentioned that 66 were required for restaurant use. In our code, do we have different definitions, different requirements for a restaurant use versus a restaurant drive-through use versus a primary drive-through use in the restaurant venue?
We do not. It's one category.
All right. So that is also something if staff could have as a takeaway to come back in a working session to have greater discussions and an evaluation based on the different types of restaurant uses. I struggle with restaurant uses because, I struggle with parking requirements because we're always balancing we don't want to pave paradise, put up a parking lot, but we also don't want to underpark. We don't want to have traffic congestion. So whenever we have a requirement that says we need 66 and we're going less than that, we have to evaluate and see, is there an opportunity for refinement in our code? Or do we need to look at some type of shared parking agreement or knowingly make an exception for this application? At this point, Commission, if I could just have straw poll with a thumbs up on your camera, is everyone comfortable with the 61 staff recommendation? Okay, I can count to 4. So since I got 5, we're good. All right. So with that, I'm going to pause the pause, and Mr. Fishman, go back to you.
Yeah, what is it, questions you have? What are we?
So that one I think is put to bed that everyone was okay with the 61, but at the same time.
Oh yeah, I'm okay with 61.
Okay. At the same time, directing staff that we want to revisit restaurant uses because right now we don't differentiate a mostly sit-down restaurant parking requirements to a drive-through restaurant parking requirements. So we want to bring that back just to make sure that we're all aligned on what those requirements are.
Right.
So, Mr. Fishman, do you have questions, comments for the applicant or comments on the application itself?
No, I looking at the site as it sits now, I'm just, I think we solved the problems. Brand new parking lot, that's a condition. The landscaping refreshed, and I think that's about it. And making sure that the landscaping meets code. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. And then just one other item to make sure I have documented appropriately, shutters. I heard shutters from a number of people. Do we want to bring the shutters back into the application?
I don't.
Okay, that's a no for Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneier? No. Mr. Grimes? Yes. Mr. Supalack? Yes. Ms. Fox? Okay, it looks like we have 3. I would be deciding, and I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. Staff, can you help me understand what the recommendation was from staff, why that was made in the negative?
Yeah, absolutely. So the development text is pretty clear that the primary building colors need to be muted, natural tones, and that bright accent colors are only appropriate in moderation. Staff interpreted moderation to be 1 or 2 bright colors, those being red and orange, and the introduction of the 3rd bright color seemed excessive compared to other fast food restaurants in the city of Dublin located on that frontage, like McDonald's or Bob Evans or those sorts.
All right. Given that interpretation of the code, I would have to side with Mr. Fishman, Mr. Schneier. The code is pretty specific with muted colors and natural tones. And so given the interpretation of the code, I would land on that side. Do we have any questions? Jane, I thought I saw your hand go up.
Just one thought. As I was looking at the satellite image of Gentry Lane, and I think it's this Bradenton along the line, and I'm not sure what the building is behind it. It looks like a very large office complex. And I'm not saying that we would do that this time about eliminating even more parking spaces, but under circumstances like this, when you have a lot of office workers and they're walking over to get something to eat and there's no place to sit outside except a table or two, and you have way too much parking and it all looks like asphalt. Yet down the street farther along where there's Noodles and Company and everything, there's a lot of very nicely landscaped frontages on the street that allow you to eat outside. These are opportunities because they face that back street that the landscaping could be utilized to give a little prettier street face instead of just looking at the rear side of Popeyes, where people actually might walk over and grab a bite to eat if the landscaping was such that you didn't feel like you were sitting at the back end of a parking lot. So I'm just saying that, you've got 20 spaces you probably don't even need, a frontage on a street that looks pretty bad back there, and the opportunity to do more with it. It's just a thought, not necessarily saying that you need to go in that direction, but I think, and just discussing this with the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as our staff, if you look at that whole block holistically, there are opportunities there. So it's just, and when it comes to the blue shutters, I mean, it's simple enough to put something on the plan and say, yeah, it looks good, or yeah, it doesn't look good. You don't have to put them on there, but it'd be nice to see what the building would look like with them. But I understand it.
So Ms. Martin.
Claudia and Martin, am I allowed to share? Can I share?
Thad, do you want to talk about that? What do you share?
Well, I just Googled, right, the alternate views of this prototype.
I mean, I would be happy to share the prototype.
Well, let me, I want to speak specifically to this one that I do have, because I think it starts to potentially, how about this? Jane said she didn't want to design from the chair. I'm capable of designing from the chair a little bit. This prototype, which is a little bit of a different view than you're showing, and if it needs be, I can email you directly the link I'm looking at so you see it.
I guess I certainly appreciate your architectural comments, but at this point of the meeting, I would want to introduce new material.
Mark, you're looping feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting a tremendous amount of.
Yeah, Nikki. Perfect, thank you. Mr. Box, go ahead. You're muted, Mr. Box.
I was just gotten a lot of feedback in my audio and that. So I was having a hard time understanding what the question directed to me was.
Yeah, so Mr. Supelak asked if he could share an image that he Googled. And so then the next best thing was, could he then email Ms. Martin directly the link that he was looking at so that we could speak directly to that image? It is an image of Popeyes. It's just not the same view of the prototype building that we were looking at.
And then I had indicated that I had reservations about introducing new material at this point in the meeting.
And it looks like we're getting a nod.
Yes, I'm with Nikki's hesitation about accepting new, what is essentially evidentiary material at this stage of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Box.
Got it. Well, and where I'm ultimately going is there are other views of the Popeyes prototype, the newer Popeyes prototype, the newer coloration, that have a variety of that better show the teal, potentially muted teal shutters. And I'll say this, that's the most muted of these potentially accent colors, but it also introduces the potential for there's an applique applied to a brick panel, those types of things. So with this long side of the building, there is opportunity to articulate this prototype a little bit differently. They have these gold colored goose crane lights that could continue down the facade further. They have the shutters that could do something. They have actually a sort of graphic on the side of the building set in brick that can be done without just necessarily disturbing the brick while still preserving the brick. And all I'm going to is there's this in the prototype itself, there's this additional layer of details that I think could solve a variety of, make a lot more of my fellow commissioners comfortable with some of the things that are happening in the architecture and really start to bring it together better. Casey, maybe all I'm saying is that review that prototype, entertain some of that a little more fully. I do think if I'm just finishing my comments, I think the space in front of the building is a no-brainer for a patio. The landscape, you have a variety of pretty mature trees around this site, but some of the other landscape needs help. I echo a lot of the other commentary on the parking lot, etc. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Supelak. Ms. Martin, can you refresh my memory? Right now, we are talking about an amended final development plan. What are next steps for this particular application?
So this evening, the commission is being asked to make a decision, and
of course,
the applicant would then be able to proceed with the building permits.
Wonderful, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we were all level set. So Mr. Supelak, given that we have an application from the applicant and that they've worked with staff and that there are specific recommendations given by staff that the applicant has agreed to, are there things that you are not comfortable with? Ms. Beal, we're getting a lot from your microphone. Thank you, Ms. Beal.
No, ultimately, I am comfortable with the submission as it is. This is me articulating. I actually think it could be a better, more holistic product, but it's not disagreeable.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Supelak, for the clarification. So did I miss anyone on the commission? I feel like I got everyone, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going before anyone has additional comments.
Can I say something?
Certainly, Mr. Fishman.
One thing I had on my notes and I forgot to mention, the cement picnic tables. I think we've covered that. I'd like to have a condition or a commitment that they would put a nice inviting area there, something like was mentioned earlier, and because they even the picnic tables look shabby, and they're concrete. So if we could maybe have them fix that up so it would be a more inviting sitting area, and with landscaping.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Kist, what was the plan with those existing tables?
Honestly, it was to remove them and not have a patio. But I'd be more than happy to work with staff to come up with seating that would be agreeable to replace those concrete seats with.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kist. Thad, are you still on? I don't see your name. There you are. You're just hiding. Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Just looking for procedures. If we make a condition that is the applicant work with staff to provide outdoor seating, is that sufficient?
If there would be some guidance in terms of what sufficient means. So if that is, architecturally compatible with the building, or composed of natural materials, something that just fleshes out what would be sufficient in the commission's view, so that staff has some guidance to, and the applicant has some guidance to work toward.
Understood. So commission, looking back to you, there are two existing tables. That patio area or the seating area, I don't think accommodates much more. Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong there. So if we direct if we direct the applicant to provide seating area equivalent to the existing area, is that sufficient for the commission at this point in time?
Can we maybe take a break here? I'm sorry for interrupting. So in the zoning code, as well as in the development text for this particular plan district, a outdoor seating area requires the approval of a conditional use by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which accounts for how many seats there are. It accounts for how much space there is for people with disabilities to navigate through the particular area. And it also requires, per the code, additional parking. So if you have, let's say, a 5,000 square foot restaurant, and then you have a 500 square foot patio, you would have to park for both of those sizes. Now, this one table that is out there since the 90s or whenever it was there, I'm not 100% sure how this ended up being. But from a staff perspective, I feel slightly uncomfortable just to say, let's just include it as part of this discussion, because that is not typically how our code reads in terms of any kind of outdoor amenities.
Thank you, Ms. Husak, for keeping us in line and following our own code. We appreciate that. So with that understood, Mr. Kist, would you feel comfortable filing for a conditional use permit to provide outdoor seating? We understand that in this day and age, it's unprecedented everything. I don't know how many times a day, how many times a week I hear the word unprecedented, but we do see the benefit, and Ms. Fox points out a very particular thing to Dublin. Right now, we are really working toward getting our outdoor amenities, our walkability. You'll hear that through every city, but we're, I don't know if you were present for some of the previous, the Chase Bank discussions specifically. We're looking to raise the bar for everyone in the city and for ourselves. So would you be willing to look at a conditional use application in the future, understanding that if it's amenable to the rest of the commission, that we would, because of our own parliamentary, procedures, Robert's rules, and following our own code, perhaps not consider that this evening?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that. I mean, like I said, the plan for this initial submission was to eliminate, I do agree that those are kind of unsightly existing seats out there. And I guess I would just ask, before I came back with the conditional use, we can't add parking as is. So if it will significantly impact that, I
Right,
would
I
just want
did-
to know up front.
Yeah, I did miss stating that the conditional use process would allow for the commission to ultimately say that the parking is adequate as to what you have currently.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
So there's that. In terms of any of the design discussions that you all had, I'm going to defer that to Nikki a little bit more because she does have a deeper insight into the development text, whether or not we would have to make any additional modifications to the text to accommodate some of those desires.
Yeah, so as far as our takeaway, I think that there were some ideas thrown around, but I don't think that there was consensus among the commission to require any of those changes for this particular application. And I'm getting a thumbs up from Mark. So I believe that I'm stating correctly. Any commissioners? Yep, okay, it looks like that's all affirmative. So then looking at the application itself and looking for, well, let me make a couple of comments first. I also appreciate the applicant's willingness to bring back the conditional use for that outdoor dining area. I work relatively close to Tuttle Crossing, and so you'll find me eating lunch at a few of those restaurants often. So I do appreciate looking at that outdoor seating area. I want to really put a pat on the back towards staff. Nikki, when you brought up the menu boards and you said, you know, we brought back all of the conditions from McDonald's who did a similar item, it makes it a little easier on us. And I know it increases the number of conditions, but it makes it a little easier on us to know that these have been vetted before, that these aren't just off the cuff, or they first time we're seeing them tonight. So thank you very much for doing that additional level of homework and bringing us the discussion items from the previous time we've seen these menu boards. So thank you for that. I also appreciate the landscaping refresh, and if we could add in there, I believe we have consensus on a requirement to, oh, yep, I see number 7. Thank you, Nikki, for already adding that. The applicant to mill and fill the parking lot to make sure that the asphalt is corrected and restored back to something that we can all be proud of. And I believe that those are all my comments. So at this point in time, does anyone else have any more comments before we move forward? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to minor development modifications.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Beal.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier, Mr. Schneier,
Like he's having trouble with his audio. Mr. Schneier?
You hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Spacebar didn't work. Yes.
and Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. And thank you for that vote. Now I will entertain another motion to approve the amended final development plan with 6. Did we end up with 6 or did we end up with 7? They're no longer presented.
7 conditions.
7 conditions. Thank you. Do I have a first?
Move.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Thank
Second.
you. Ms. Beal, back to you.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Call.
Yes. Well, Mr. Kiss, thank you for spending your evening with us this evening. We certainly look forward to seeing you in the city. Thank you for your patience and thank you for understanding. And specifically, thank you for looking at providing additional seating in the outdoor area. We are looking forward to welcoming Popeyes into Dublin.
All right. Thank you all very much and have a great evening.
Thank you. You do the same. All right. We are now, well, we're cruising right along. We're at case number 5, the Country Club at Muirfield Village, case number 20-136, A&D LLP, located at 8715 Muirfield Drive, amended final development plan. This application is a request for renovations and exterior modifications to the swimming pool concession building, the club patio and outdoor bar space, and the installation of 4 pickleball courts and a lounge area. The 79.66 acre site is west of the intersection of Muirfield Drive with Whittingham Drive and is zoned planned unit development district. Mr. Panschel, back with us this evening. Zach, thank you for your patience, and we are ready for you when you are ready for us.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, there we go. Good evening. This is an application for review and approval of an amended final development plan. Highlighted in yellow is the site where the country club at Muirfield Village is located. It is cutting off a major portion of the site, as what is highlighted is just what is within Franklin County. This site is located west of Muirfield Drive. To give you some better context of an aerial that is more pertinent to what we'll be looking at this evening, there is a zoom in of the facilities that are existing at the site. The 3 red boxes are the areas of consideration tonight. The first box is the clubhouse, the second is the pool house, and the third box is vacant space that will be considered for the new courts that you will be seeing tonight. This course and facility were both developed in the early 1970s. Due to the age of this, we do not have development text or any details regarding the original facilities or any design standards for any improvements being made to the site. All previous improvements located on this site have been approved due to how they are compatible with the existing facilities and materials on the site. Shown on the screen are 2 photos. One is both to show revisions to existing spaces. The left photo is the existing clubhouse patio that is located at the clubhouse that will be renovated, and the right photo is the pool house area with the green awning. Both of these spaces will be removed and renovated with this application. Shown on the screen, and I apologize, the site plan is a little challenging to see. Highlighted in red is the clubhouse addition. As stated, the applicant is proposing to remove the existing patio bar and replace it with an 850 square foot patio bar that will be under the cedar. It'll be constructed of cedar. It'll be a patio structure with a bronze corrugated roof. The bar itself will be constructed and clad with a stacked stone that can be found throughout the facility, especially with the stone wall that is just to the west of this building and is seen throughout the facility. With this application, there is also a 217 square foot pergola, which you can see barely on the screen, which will replicate an existing pergola that is there. All materials will be the same. All patio furnishings that are being proposed with this application will be complementary to the addition and the existing clubhouse. Some modifications are happening on the south elevation of the building, where they will be including the back bar, which can be seen at the center of the photo, as well as some facade improvements in terms of material changes and some egress modifications to the interior of the clubhouse. Highlighted in red on the screen is the proposal for the pool house patio bar. The applicant will be removing that green awning that you had seen before and will be replacing with a 945 square foot patio bar that will be enclosed by or covered by a cedar patio structure, which will have a clear corrugated roof. The bar itself will be clad in an azure colored wall tile, and there are additional minor modifications to the elevations. The east elevation will see some minor egress modifications for the interior dining room. That includes the garage door that you're seeing, as well as a side service door for customers to walk up. as well as another egress point just to the north of the garage. On the south side, where the bar will be located, there's another egress point that will be added, and the slide tracking doors for the bar area, which are going to be just behind the bar. And on the west elevation, they will be adding a new walk-in freezer that will be about 95 square feet. And finally, the applicant is proposing as well a approximately 7,500 square foot pickleball facility, which will include 4 pickleball courts. The material of the asphalt and the treatment of the asphalt will be similar to the existing courts that are seen on the site. There will be an 8-foot black mesh fence that will surround the facility to keep the activities located to where this is being constructed. The applicant is also proposing a 550 square foot patio, which you can see at the center of the screen, for any players or members that will be lounging in that area. The applicant is continuing to work with staff to finalize landscaping details along this area, as it is vacant land and there will be trees removed. They are actively working with our landscape staff to make sure that any replacement trees are replaced, and any landscaping around the patio and pickleball courts will be sufficient for the area. Planning has reviewed this to all applicable amended final development plan criteria and are recommending approval with the one condition that the applicant continue to work with staff for it to finalize the landscaping details surrounding the pickleball courts. I'm happy to answer any questions if the commission has any for staff. If not, the applicant is here to address any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And as far as applicant goes, who do we have here tonight for the applicant? Mr. Toddy, is that you?
Yes, Matt Toddy, Architect Design Collective, here representing the club.
Great.
Welcome. Welcome. Do you have a presentation or any comments for us tonight before we jump into questions from the commission?
I do not. Zach did a great job presenting, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you. Well, welcome, and I'm sure we'll have questions for you. All right, looking back for board questions for the staff or for the applicant. Mr. Fishman, did you want to start us off?
Yes, it's fine. I think it's great. The one question, I've never seen a clear corrugated roof that looked good after 5 years. They usually look yellow and faded and stained and so on. Is there a new material you're using or something that I don't know about?
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Toddy.
Yes, that's a great comment. I appreciate that. I am actually flipping through the drawings to find that specification right now. It is a product that we were familiar with, and historically speaking, as long as it is well maintained and cleaned regularly, it tends to not have that type of issue. I will see if I can find that information for you here.
Thank you. We'll continue on, Mr. Toddy. When you have that information, feel free to flag me down and we will come back to that. Mr. Fishman, did you have any other questions for staff or for the applicant?
Not right now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schneier?
Actually, I had the same comment as Mr. Fishman. It just I didn't find what I was looking for there. The corrugated roof. I assume it's permanent, that it doesn't open. And I just have a question with the material and the waviness and whether that's just actually the best solution for what you're looking to do.
Mr. Schneier, I think there are quite a few of us who have that same question, so I'm glad Mr. Fishman kicked us off on the right foot. Mr. Toddy, were you able to find what you were looking for?
Yes, I was. Thanks for the respite there for a second. So the product, it's a Crane products. It's a corrugated fiberglass. It is fixed permanent. And the reason that we're going with that transparent product here on the patio at the pool house was because of the use of that being at the pool house. It's also intended that the tennis players will be able to come over and use this area as well. There's a connection there between the two areas at the club, and it's a seasonal use for when that pool is open, that the transparent or translucency makes sense in order to kind of keep the daylighting, keep the sunlight on that patio, but also protect some, provide some cover from UV, and also just give a little bit of shade to that space. So I hope that helps a little bit with those questions.
Do you have this material anywhere where it's been, proven to keep its integrity after a few years?
I don't have that list off the top of my head. I could find that list of places where it's been used.
Thank you, Mr. Toddy. Staff, is that a typically allowed material in a roof? I don't know that we have that anywhere else. Mr. Fishman, you might know off the top of your head if we have that anywhere else in the city of Dublin.
We do not, okay, that I know of, but there are some in parts of Columbus. I noticed one in the short north and so on, and I actually made a comment to somebody working at that place, and this has been a while back, and he said that's the way it gets, and it was yellowed and dull, and he said we hose it, but the sun wrecks it, and so I don't think that's now I've been in restaurants glass or patios that have glass roofs. Those are very easy to maintain, really heavy glass. So it's probably more money. But I would really, unless I could see something that looked great after 5 years or so, with minimal care, and people aren't going to get up there and scrub that roof, that's for sure. But I think it does more sun damage than anything else. And everyone I've ever seen that's not is yellow and dull.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. So staff, looking to you. Mr. Fishman tends to have a really good memory, so I trust him, but we always want to verify, are there places in the city where this is allowed or is this permitted according to code?
So I may ask Claudia to fill in here. I think it's a little reverb for you, Rebecca.
Yeah, certainly. There is not anything in the code that would prohibit this material. In terms of, is this in place anywhere in town? I, off the top of my head, can't think of a location.
All right, thank you, Claudia. So, Mr. Toddy, I think quite a few of us, because we have experience with similar type materials, and we don't know specifically if this material is exactly the same as the material that we are familiar with in use. I think it's going to be a hesitation on the staff of most, if not all, of the commission for this clear material roof. Additionally, considering the tennis use and the pickleball use and the pool use coming over for that respite, the shade is appreciated. And so I understand you want to keep daylight, you want to keep the visibility and the view and that sort of thing. At the same time, there is some desire at that point to have shade, to be able to step in under an awning and get relief from the sun. So I'm going to pause there and go back to Planning Commission questions at this point. We'll take a discussion a little bit later. So, Mr. Fishman, did you have any more questions that you wanted to ask either staff or the applicant?
None.
No. Thank you. Mr. Schneer, did you have any more questions that you wanted to ask the applicant?
No.
Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on. Ms. Fox.
I'm sorry, there we go. Mine was the same question. I think that it should maybe be another material. I just worry about the same things that the others did. Feel like it'll get. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but yes, that was my only concern.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Looking for Mr. Grimes. There you are. Mr. Grimes, any questions at this point for staff or the applicant?
In the pickleball area, which I think is a great idea, that's a kind of a quasi-industrial lot there. And it would be nice to get that whole area cleaned up. I know there's a lot of big stone being stored there and some other residue. Is there a plan to landscape the whole thing, or are you just going to hide half the lot, or what's the plan there?
So the plan right now is to provide a buffer between that lot and the new pickleball court. There'll be some mounding, some landscaping that goes in that space. And then, as Zach mentioned, we are also working with staff to provide additional plantings on the buffer zones on the east side between that lot and Muirfield Drive, and then on the south side between that lot and the adjacent neighborhood. There's opportunity there to replace some dying trees with new ones, and also replace some of the trees that we're removing to place the pickleball court in that location.
So you're saying you want to continue to use that area for material storage as a temporary area before it's placed in other parts?
That is correct. The balance of that area that does not go to the pickleball court will remain as is.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Mr. Supalack.
So I have a similar line of questioning, and maybe this is for staff as much as anybody else, right? The lot Leo refers to is obviously, it's a little bit off of Muirfield Drive, but you can see it. And there are periodically trailers and construction materials up there. And we can agree the country club may need some measure of that staging sort of lot for some of the events they put on per year. That said, to hide it would be lovely. The other thing that is sort of goofy right on that site is that the city, the bike path that comes down that side of Muirfield, it will eventually connect in a couple different ways. It'll duck under a bridge and go under Muirfield, but it is truncated at that lot, and I don't think it connects to the neighborhood that's immediately to the south. So there's this goofy condition in our bike path that occurs right there. And I suppose my question for staff is, could we fashion into this agreement a condition that finishes that path?
Well, I may need you as well for this. I believe that's something that could be considered.
Zach, can you pull up an aerial or your presentation one more time? I'm not 100% sure which area we're talking about.
So there is existing connection on the east side. I think we all see it, and if anybody can see this, that's great. So there's a connection currently on this side of Muirfield. You're talking about the connection right here.
So yes, so let's agree. There's a path worn in. If you scroll up there, right, that there's a path worn in at some points. There is some asphalt, but it just sort of truncates at the drive. And again, this is the lot that Leo's referring to. It's just an odd experience for that path. And if you scroll down now, it doesn't quite connect to the adjacent neighborhood.
Unfortunately, I think those paths are private. At least the one to the north is.
For sure it is.
Like the Muirfield paths, they're not city paths.
Got it. Understood.
Mr. Supalack, any other questions at this time for staff or the applicant?
No, I was just going to say, Matt, resins and plastics have come a long way. They are far more UV stabilized these days than they once were. We have all lived a long time and seen the corrugated, the cheap stuff, yellow. I wonder if there is opportunity. I don't know if this will end up becoming a condition to remove that, or if there's opportunity for you to demonstrate the product more fully and its UV stability.
I think there could be opportunity for that on the website in that video.
Mark, you're providing feedback again. Thank you.
Maybe try this one. My understanding, though, is that it does come with a 20-year warranty. And to your point, Mr. Supalack, it is, we have come a long way with these types of synthetic products. So I think we would be willing to, figure out ways that we could make the commission comfortable with the specification if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Toddy. All right, staff, has any public comment been received on this item?
We have not received public comment on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Husak. All right, on to the discussion portion. So we did have opportunity to ask some questions, so discussion is not necessarily, so it's definitely not limited. If you have other questions, feel free to answer them, but Planning Commission, looking to you, Mr. Fishman, do you want to start us off for discussion?
Yeah, just real quickly, I think the plan looks great. I agree with Mr. Cyberlak that we really need to screen that lot, their storage lot, from Muirfield Drive and the neighbors. And that's been an eyesore for a long time. And since they're putting the pickleball court there, I think that landscaping should continue around so you can't see it from the neighborhood and Muirfield Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Any other comments?
Back to Mr. Supelak's point on the pathway. Yes, yeah, private, but I know in a lot of those areas over there, their signs are around that saying this is a private area. I would still like to see it connected up, and maybe that's an opportunity for the club to just put up a sign. This is a private area of a country club, or something like that. But it would be probably a nice and neater thing to have it connected and finished, and fit it into the landscaping of hiding that area. I would like to see that put up and finished, because the approach to that, it looks a little bit rough as you're driving by it. Yeah, you go by it quickly, but still, it's part of improving that whole area, at least from what the eye can see from the roadway, or if somebody is riding their bike or walking through that area. And it could be for members. Members will be walking through there and are entitled to walk from public to private lot walkway. So that's something I would like to see connected up.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Mr. Schneer, your comments on this item?
Well, just in passing, I'm a little reluctant to deal with the path issue. One, it is, those paths are part of the association, and so there's what authority we have. It just sort of feels a little bit like a regulatory overreach on our part to, try to influence that as well. But and other than that, other than the canopy, I like the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Mr. Toddy, just for the rest of the commission, do you have any plans? Are there long-term plans for the paths so that we're maybe not beating a dead horse, but taking into consideration what the association is looking at with the connectivity?
At this time, we do not have plans related to that area, the area in question.
Thank you, Mr. Toddy. All right, Mr. Fishman.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion. I think that's a private path, and I think what you're talking about is hooking it into the public path, into the neighborhood. So the private paths are notoriously separate from for liability and all kinds of things from the public paths. Like in many cases, right on that road, there's two parallel paths. People ask me all the time, how come we have because the one is private and the one is the public path. So I think that's the problem. I think that would be an overreach if we ask them to connect that path.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. All right, moving on the commission for comments. Ms. Fox, do you want to discuss your comments on this application?
Yes, I like the plan altogether. I have concerns about the translucent roof on the pool, mainly because I think if it's translucent and you let the sun in, you're gonna cook underneath it and it's gonna get dirty. But overall, I think the plan is beautiful. I would always love to see the part of the partial that you're all speaking about cleaned up, but you're here to ask us about this plan, and I agree with Mr. Schneier that's what we talk about. But it doesn't hurt to send a request to the club to say, take care of that little area, because it isn't one of the most pleasant looks when you have such a beautiful facility. So I like the plan, and I would just encourage you to to consider maybe something else in the way of the roof. But overall, I see no reason not to pass this particular, request.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. We kind of got out of order there. Do other people, Mr. Grimes, I don't know that you've had your comments. I know we did questions. Do you have any comments?
I love the plan. I've said more than enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Any other commission members have any other comments before I wrap us up? Seeing none, I echo the comments of the previous commission members. I think that overall it looks fantastic. While we're looking at applications, we do look holistically. It's in our nature to take a step back and make sure that not just what's on the table in front of us, but the overall area is something we can all be proud of. And we certainly appreciate your willingness to look at different options for the roof, though that is not going to necessarily be a hang up. I know that Muirfield Village historically has always wanted to maintain all of the amenities throughout the association. It's beautiful. It always has been beautiful. I wasn't here when Warren was many, many moons ago. I'm a somewhat recent newcomer, but the entire association is beautiful, and this is one more addition to that beauty, so thank you. I do have concerns on the roof, but if, Mr. Toddy, you were looking at this from you want to be proud of it and you want it to be sustained with that 20-year warranty, understanding that if it goes bad in 5 years, you're going to be taking it up with the manufacturer and installer, then my fears are somewhat mitigated there. Overall, the pickleball courts are fun. I share the rest of the Planning Commission's concern about shielding those from a vacant lot that's used multifaceted. And I know that you share that same concern. You want the members to be able to enjoy pickleball and have a nice view at the same time, and being able to obstruct view of something that maybe isn't quite so pretty. So thank you for your consideration this evening. Looking back to the commission now, we have an item on the table. There is only one condition provided. Is there any other discussion before we take motion? Mr. Fishman?
Would they be receptive to making sure they shield Muirfield Drive as long as they're doing that? Because they're going to be shielding it away from that on their side, and it seems like it'd be fair to shield the storage lot on the other two sides with some opaque trees or something.
Mr. Toddy, can you speak to comfort level or?
Yes, and I think that is right in alignment with what we're doing. What we're working with the staff right now on is providing documentation. I believe that might be the condition that's on there. Make sure that buffer is adequate along Muirfield Drive.
Right.
Mr. Henschel, can you present that one condition just so we have it documented in front of us?
Absolutely.
Additionally, there is opportunity for shielding as we're, moving trees around, making sure that the trees are compensated elsewhere on the lot. I know that was something in the staff report. So looking at the condition, I am comfortable. The rest of the commission, if you're comfortable, I will at this point in time entertain a motion.
So move to approve the amended final development plan with one condition.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes.
Second.
That was Mr. Supelak. Ms. Beal, back to you.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Supelak,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Schneer.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beal. Well, Mr. Toddy, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for spending your evening with us. And thank you for always looking to improve the amenities that we share in the city of Dublin. We are certainly looking forward to seeing those amenities, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything from us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening. All right, everyone. We are on to case number 6. Arthur Farms, case number 20-092 INF This is PID 272-000-166 for an informal review. This application is a request for informal review of a potential future development proposal to rezone an 11.4 acre site from rural district to planned unit development district to develop lots for 34 single-family homes. The site is southeast of the intersection of Shire Rings Road with Cosgray Road. And Zach, it looks like you get to present to us third time. So thank you very much for all of your preparation that goes into these, and I will turn time over to you.
I actually volunteered for Zach tonight, if you're all okay with hearing from me.
Oh, well, Claudia, you had us at that okay. So Claudia, welcome, and turning it over to you.
Thank you so much. 3 cases is a lot on an agenda, in addition to everything else. Can you see my screen and presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, that makes me feel so much better. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Ayrshire Farms is an application that has been submitted to us earlier this year, and it was something that Jane may have seen during her council review for an annexation. So the site was annexed into the city of Dublin early this year. I think it was in February, and came out of Washington Township and annexed into the city of Dublin. And as part of annexation ordinances, sites automatically get zoned R rural district upon annexation into the city of Dublin. So this is the current zoning of the site. So typically, if any development proposals were to be contemplated, rezoning would be required because R is really our least intensely developable area within the city zoning code. The applicant filed for an application for a rezoning with a preliminary development plan, which would be for a planned unit development district, and then also for a preliminary plat, which would accompany that PUD. And we've had a few conversations with them about certain conversations we've had with the Planning and Zoning Commission, other different developments that we have seen here in the last few months. And based on staff's suggestion, we had recommended the applicant might come to the commission informally prior to moving forward with a request for a vote from the commission. So that is what we are here for tonight. The next time this application would come before you would be for a vote to rezone, which would be a recommendation to City Council. So the site is somewhat L-shaped. It's on the east side of Cosgray Road, south side of Shire Rings, and Ballantrae is to the south of the site. So there are currently single-family lots along Trafalgar Lane that are adjacent to the rear of this particular site. And the site consists of 3 lots there on the east side that are actually the rear of lots that are remaining within the township, but they are included in this development application, and they were also included within this annexation. So all of those lots outlined there in yellow are within the city of Dublin. And then to the north, you have a site within the West Innovation District, which is currently zoned ID4, which would allow for a variety of research uses, as well as a multifamily use would be permitted there as well. And then on the east side of Cosgray, the sites there in the grayish outline, they are within Washington Township and not currently incorporated into the city. However, they have been for sale for a while, and we've, as City of Dublin staff, have gotten quite a few inquiries into what the development potential might be for those sites. Everything else around the outline in yellow site on the east side is within the township, and they are larger residential lots there. Here are a couple of photos. It is currently obviously vacant and being partially farmed there, especially that larger lot on the on the western edge of the site. What the applicant is proposing is, as I said, it's about 11 acres, a little bit more than that. And they're requesting to have this subdivided and zoned for 34 lots with a density of 3 units to the acre and providing about 2¼ acre of open space. The community plan for this particular area has a density recommended right around that 3 units to the acre. And there is something that I put into that staff report, Zach and I did, about what that medium density means really for sites that are more along an infill type of environment, and where you might have a larger site that could have 3 units to the acre in one area or 1.5 acres in a different area. Ballantrae in and of itself is overall probably around 2 units to the acre. And that's definitely something that the commission has honed in on a lot in these types of developments where it is adjacent to an established area. So for a site this small, there is supposed to be a mixed type of housing, but for an 11-acre site, that's probably not appropriate. The community plan really contemplated that on a larger scale when that land use was developed. So the proposal is to have an entry point off Shire Rings Road that would go to the south, and then 2 cul-de-sacs that would go east and west. All of the streets proposed are public streets. I had noted in the staff report that there were a couple of concerns that staff identified with the lots at the end of that entry drive. So I think that is 13 and 12, where potentially there could be some headlight trespassing into the front of these homes. The applicant has informed staff that from a interior layout, that's not a concern on their end because bedrooms would likely be facing toward the rear. We'd also pointed out that there are a few lots that are rather small compared to some of the other lots that are at the edges of the development. With the shape of the site, that obviously is somewhat challenging to lay it out in a more even pattern. But there are a couple that we were concerned about having maneuverabilities in and out of garages for those particular lots. As you can see, there's also 2 major open spaces proposed. There is a minor open space on the east side of the entry drive that buffers from the residential lots to the east that are in the township, but the 2 major ones are proposed to primarily function as their stormwater management areas, and the applicant has provided images of what that may look like with the ponds having fountains and more natural stone outcroppings. So you can see in these pictures, some of the design elements are reminiscent of the landscaping that is currently within Ballantrae. And so that would tie in for that type of neighborhood feel. There will also be a bike path added to the Shire Rings Road frontage. And then along Causeway, staff has requested and the applicant has agreed that there would be a continuation of that buffer that is established along the Ballantrae frontage. So they have currently a 50-foot landscape buffer along Causeway that is maintained in Ballantrae by the HOA. And speaking of which, the open spaces are supposed to be dedicated to the city, but maintained by a forced and funded homeowners association. And then the applicant has also provided elevation images. As you've seen in the staff report, they are very much of the farmhouse style, which has more of the board and batten siding and the darker window frames and those beam elements that are currently preferred, and then also some metal roofing elements there as well. And there are ranches that are available within this particular neighborhood, as well as two-story homes. The applicant has stated that their intended target audience is an empty nester buyer. But as you all know, that is not something that we could in zoning mandate here. The applicant is a resident of Ballantrae, and we had urged them to talk to the community, which they have done so. So I'm sure that he can fill you in a little bit on those conversations. And with that, I have discussion questions outlined for you all to get you all started, and I am available to answer any questions, and the applicant here is here obviously as well.
Thank you, Claudia. As this is an in-panel review, sorry, I'm getting a feedback. Claudia, that might be your audio.
Yeah.
Claudia, I think you still have your mic on.
I do. It's my 7 monitors that are giving me problems right now. I'm working on it, I promise.
No worries. So Claudia, oh, well, I was just going to ask you a question, but it doesn't matter. So do we have an applicant here tonight on this item for Ayrshire Farms? I'm looking.
Yes. It's Todd Foley.
Hello, Todd. How are you?
Very well.
Jack Reynolds is here as well.
Wonderful, Jack. Thank you for joining us this evening. Do you have a presentation for us tonight to supplement Claudia's discussion? Do you have a statement that you'd like to make to the commission before we look at some questions from the commission?
Yeah, we don't have a formal presentation. I was just going to reference the site plan, I think. Just had a few comments to make if it's appropriate. Appreciate everybody's time with the agenda. So yeah, if it's okay, I can roll right into it. As Jack mentioned, we have Jack Reynolds, who's the counsel for the property owner, and then we also have Mike King and Courtney Mitchell, who are the property owners and developers intended of this project. So, and as Claudia mentioned, we've spent a fair amount of time over the last couple of years through the annexation, and then likewise into our design work here. And I think just being sensitive to some of the changing dynamics in the home marketplace and all the things that you as a commission and council and staff have considered with this idea of changing perception on some single family homes and the idea of smaller lots and narrower lots and narrow setbacks and all the things that you guys have spent a lot of time looking at. We thought it, as she mentioned, would be best if we kind of maybe paused our push forward and come before you to have a, real candid, open conversation about our thoughts for the project. Obviously, we feel like this is a really great use for this site. It's a very unique size site. It almost, you look at it and then you zoom out and look at the context of Ballantrae and you kind of think, boy, it would have been great if that was part of Ballantrae to begin with and all those other lots, but obviously circumstances didn't have it be a part of that. So, you're left with these summation of lots and how do you create a highest and best use in those areas. So that's kind of how this evolution happened. And, Mike and Courtney have a vision for creating this kind of boutique neighborhood that can create a really high quality single family home that it may have empty nesters be part of it, but I think the real focus of who they would like to see or might expect to be in there would be kind of more of a transitional family that perhaps is moving out of a larger home that's in Ballantrae with smaller kids, and maybe you might move into this style of home that you have a high school or a college, and you're not quite ready. I mean, obviously, a lot of the elevations we submitted are 2-story and things like that, and so people who are maybe just starting to get on the cusp of the empty nester, but really still active, still want to have large outdoor activity spaces behind their house and things like that. So that's kind of the vision that they've had, was this kind of modern farmhouse look, a lot of attention to architecture and standards. So some of this is not spelled out in the plans that we had, but there's going to be a real focus intent on making sure that architecturally that we don't have houses that are the same right next to each other, and really trying to stay focused on standards from that respect. Obviously, this site has potentially some access challenges in the sense that it is going to limit what type of development could go here with the adjacency to the roundabout. We think this is a good transitional site to the innovation sites that are north and what could come about from those. So when we talk about what's in Ballantrae to our southern border, we think that these configuration of a little higher density single family than what's in Ballantrae, we don't think it's significantly higher, but it is higher, that can start to provide a little bit of a buffer to Shire Rings and things that might occur to the north of us. So the homes that are kind of preliminarily been looked at, they're intended to have potentially a 3-car garage, might start at north of $450,000. So, much, larger upscale type product. And what we've done, so obviously you guys have spent a lot of time benchmarking and looking at other sites in your community that have this idea of narrower lots. I was a part of the Hamlet project that went through a while ago, but what's a little unique with this is, for the most part, we've tried to provide a deeper rear yard to these homes, which from the perspective of Mike and Courtney and us, from a design perspective, that's really where you want that extra open space per se. We've looked at open space on this as more, it's the private open space for the homeowner. Let's make the lots a little deeper. Let's allow them to have a larger outdoor activity area where they can, do fire pits and decks and all the things that people want from an entertainment perspective. So these, and there's a variety. There are some lots that are, 100 feet, but there are some that are, 150. So there's a variety of those as well, which, we know open space is a really big part of the lens that we look through on these projects. And so we have the kind of passive element with the retention ponds, and we've started to look at how we might treat those, but there's still obviously always room to consider how those can evolve. But the focus has really been put on the lot itself and making sure that we can create a lot that's truly desirable. It allows for a larger house. It doesn't have wasted side yards that really don't necessarily provide value to certain buyers, and put the depth and the space in the rear that can be enjoyed by the homeowners. So, so that's kind of where we're at today. We are very interested, obviously, in where you guys stand as a commission on this type of product. I know they're very anxious to come out of this with some tangible things that we can look at and try to move forward with it, because we think it's a really great, could be a really great addition to this area. Jack, Mike, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add. We can kind of button this up and get to the commission comments. So.
And we get some feedback from the commission members and answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. All right, looking to the commission for questions for the applicant or for staff. Mr. Supelak, do you want to kick us off?
Don't mind if I do. I actually sent a note, I think, to Zach earlier. A lot of my questions, the line of questions are going to go to, there are some numbers on these documents, but there are some numbers missing that don't necessarily give us a full sense of lot coverage and that line of intensity that we've been having as of late. Right. And then even things like what is the side yard? While it's drawn in, it's not necessarily dimensioned on these things. Can we get some of that background?
So what the development text that the applicant has provided in their original submission states is that the minimum required side yard would be 6 feet. So a house could be built to within 6 feet to the lot line.
12 feet house to house.
Correct.
And what about coverage?
No, it's 60% in there.
It was 60, right? 65?
I think it's at 60 in the staff report.
60, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Supelak, and I believe, staff and applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the intensity, the coverage will depend on the house, the floor plan that the homeowner chooses to put on the lot. Mr. Foley's nodding his head.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to reduce the echo that comes, but yeah, that would be the case. With the addition of the third car garage on some of the footprints, that's going to vary it. Whether it's a ranch, that's the nice thing about the 2-story is it allows us to vary that lot coverage a little bit.
I actually think your lot shape, your variety of lot shapes and proportions will vary the neighborhood quite a bit. With regard to lot 21, what is the back end of that lot? Is something different's going on? What's going on there?
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. I should have covered that. So that is actually part of the leach field system for the home that's directly to the north. It's kind of a weird. There's an easement there, and we've worked with engineering and with staff on trying to create some parameters to address that issue if and when that system is no longer functioning or it comes offline. So unfortunately, it's not something that we can just get rid of. Ideally, we would like to, but so.
And that is certainly something that we are still working through at this point. The city engineer has not indicated that that would be an acceptable lot configuration.
Mark, any other questions for staff or the applicant at this time? Thank you. Mr. Grimes, any questions for staff or the applicant?
Yes, on the pond, the open areas, is it that much water retention area required for this size of a project? Because it doesn't really seem that the open areas aren't very usable. If I were a resident in that area, yeah, I might be able to walk around it a little bit, maybe sit on a bench, but it doesn't look like a whole lot more. Maybe walk the dog along part of it.
So staff, if we could go to you first as far as how much retention is required versus anything that's in excess of the requirement.
Todd, I think I'll let that go in your wheelhouse here, but I doubt that you would put in ponds where they aren't needed.
Yeah, so part of the reason why we don't have just one large pond, with this being a linear site, some of the drainage patterns that we see across there we're going to be forced to kind of direct our stormwater in kind of two directions. So there's one, and it's also related kind of to our outlets of our site. So that's why you see one in the southeast corner, and then obviously the one up along the north. So so those are currently sized, to answer your question specifically. At this stage and at the level of engineering that we've looked at, those are pretty close to approximate sizes that we would anticipate. Our engineers spent a lot of time with engineering to make sure that we have the right easements and the right setbacks and things like that for us to be planning at this stage. So for us, I appreciate the open space, kind of the usability of them. And really, for this kind of smaller type of site, I think the focus is that, we have this connection to the Ballantrae Trail system. And, as you go down Cosgray and obviously in the future as that development continues to push north. So, anybody desiring more of an active type of scenario has that great asset that they can look at. We can certainly continue to look at how we might be able to celebrate those kind of more passive park-like, retention pond areas design. So,
and then the staff notes that the portion behind the houses, it has not been annexed or is annexed. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, it's annexed
So the entire site is part. Okay.
of the city of Dublin. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, in the notes, it also is concerned about the frontage on 4 of the lots on the cul-de-sacs and frontage and parking and so forth. I imagine you looked at a lot of different layouts potential within this small of a space. And I don't know if it's possible to have an entrance exit off the roundabout instead of coming off of Shire Rings. But was that a potential explored? I don't know if that's something the city would even want to have, but I just thought I'd ask it because, I mean, those lots coming in are a fair bit smaller in comparison to the balance of the lots. Is it possible to have the entrance coming off the roundabout and thereby eliminating some of the issues around frontage and parking and so forth?
Yeah, unfortunately not. The applicant did, as part of their filing of this application with us, do an extensive traffic study, and they've had all those perimeters worked out with our traffic engineering folks. And there are certain rules and regulations that go along with how far away that you can be from a roundabout for an entry or an exit. And Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's as far as it can be in the location that engineering requested it to be.
Yeah, it is access to this site, be it single family or anything out, that's where it's going to need to be because of the different geometries and existing conditions of the roundabout. And Cosgray, it presents its own challenges as well that wouldn't suffice. So we've looked at that extensively. We've talked with the fire department as well. So we've kind of done our homework on where we need to do that. Specific to your comments about the lot, that's part of the approach that that Mike and Courtney have taken is taking a look at the types of houses that they provide. And then there are going to be certain lots that are going to essentially be restricted for certain housing options. And that's kind of how we'll be able to deal hopefully with driveway approaches and things like that. So that's part of why you see some lots are a little narrower, the approaches and things like that. So.
And then as far as the character of the houses in relation to the surrounding area, I know, there's farmhouses there now, but I don't know how many years before those will all be gone. And is the farm aspect being overdone in this development? I mean, I understand to have some accents and some aspects that might show that, but from the model shown, it seems a little bit maybe too much in my taste. And considering the number of lots, I know it's a small development. Maybe having it a little bit more muted might be probably a little bit more compatible with some of Ballantrae and other things that may be going on across Share Rings or in the adjoining area. Just my comment.
Okay.
And then, you know, the common areas, it just seems to be, you know, it again, made more functional. I know you're close to the dairy fields, but there isn't yet the paths down that entranceway or up going north yet to connect it to those park areas safely for pedestrians. But you know, you need to have something within the development, you know, that gives it more opportunities for the residents than what I see or the concepts that I see. I'd like to see a better open space.
Okay.
So that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Ms. Cusack, just stepping back for a moment, any public comment on this item?
We do not have public comment on this particular item. We do have a public comment that is more along the larger conversation we had at the last meeting regarding conversations about development patterns. So it seemed as though that might be better left to the end of the meeting, but it's not particular to this case.
Agreed. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Ms. Fox.
I agree with Mr. Grimes. I believe that well, first I have the question of what are the ranges of square foot sizes of the houses? What do they range from, the smallest to the largest in square foot?
Yeah. So I don't have the exact ones. I apologize, but I know we're going to be in around the 3,000 square foot size. You know, slightly above, you know, slightly below that, but that's kind of the average square footage across the 6 different types that we have.
Additionally, the square footage of the lots. Do you have?
Oh, okay. I'm asking the square footage of the house because some of these lots are only 0.15 acres. So what's the smallest square footage do you offer? You would be offering?
Yeah, Mike, do you have that handy? I apologize, Ms. Fox. I don't know that much.
Okay. Because when you say 3,000 square foot is the average, that might mean that the largest might be 5,000 square foot. So I'm just curious about what the sizes of it.
If I may, this is Mike King. The largest square footage will be a 2-story at 3,000 square feet. The ranch will start at about 2,000 square feet. So they'll range in 2,000 to a max of 3,000. And we're going to pre-program the homes on each lot to make sure that we're not overindulging house intensity on lot. So the smaller lots, such as 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 34 will be the smaller house types. And we may only put 2-car garages on, which will be a 40-foot wide product. With a 3rd-car garage, it'll be a 50-foot wide product. But again, it's not the width or the intensity. We're looking for rear yard living, connectivity through bike path space to Ballantrae. As Todd mentioned, we are residents of Ballantrae. We live approximately 3 blocks away from the site, and we use the bike paths every day, if not twice a day, with our dogs. So connectivity is very important to us, and rear yard living is very important to us. And we're also would like to incorporate a 10-foot tree preserve through all the lots that abut adjacent housing. So those lots will consistently and always have a buffer to the existing neighbors.
Right. Thank you. I think one of the things that I guess I'm questioning is the trade-off with the density as many lots as you have here. I do like the fact that the lots are all different sizes. That's great. But I have to question also, what is it that the neighborhood and staffing mentions it too, is that in order to allow that kind of high density, you are looking at providing a mix of housing options that creates some kind of cohesive neighborhood that offers something in exchange for that kind of density. And I think what Mr. Grimes is speaking to, and I agree with him, is that this is a very traditional layout of a suburban development without some of the newer opportunities for, especially if it's empty nesters, some of the physical and social amenities that you would look for in the trade-off for the density. For instance, like a community garden or a place that you can actually have a central focus point that people come and gather and socialize, that you would sit down and have a conversation with your neighbor. I appreciate that the private backyard is an important element that you've considered. But I think for empty nesters, and this is something that Commission's been talking about, and these empty nester communities, is what they're finding is that they're looking for connection. And this sort of brings everybody out to their backyards privately, and the green spaces here and the reserve spaces aren't usable. They're just functional for water retention, and that's about it. I worry about the density. I worry about the parking in here, and I worry about also Mr. Grimes was saying, it's a lot of architecture. It's a lot of houses right next to each other. They're not cottages. They're regular single-family homes, 2,000 to 3,000 square foot, pretty good sized house. The pocket neighborhood piece where you have some central location, an interest that brings you to the front space of the house I know it's too small for a community center, but it's not too small for things like a dog park or a community garden or some centralization of a group of houses around a little centerpiece that gives you some green space. I would much prefer that. There's a lot missing, as Mr. Supalak said, to get an idea of just how much lot coverage these houses are going to cause. And then 12 foot apart between a 2,000 and 3,000 square foot house, that's pretty tight. That's pretty tight living. So, I feel the density is a lot, is quite a bit tight in here.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Going next to, so just an item of note, Mr. Schneer had to drop, and so we'll excuse him for the rest of the meeting. Going next to Mr. Supalak.
So I'm generally going to sort of piggyback Ms. Fox. We on occasion see these communities come in, right? They are seeking exception, right? And I think in the past we have accommodated said exception periodically, right? Some better, some worse, but nonetheless, there is a certain amount of, we recognize there's a certain amount of appetite for these clusters in our city. I actually think this one at the scale at plus or minus 30 lots is a perfectly appropriate kind of boutique size for something like this. That said, as we get into this, right, there's sort of standard steps in each of the process. So this is an informal review. The next one has sort of stipulations about what needs to come in, so on and so forth down the path. I think, and this is just me speaking, I think every time we see this, if we're going to go down this path with you in some way, shape, or form, whether it's this or refined, we will want to be convinced of a lot of different things, right? We will want to be convinced, and ultimately, anything we approve, we tend to see more for this situation than I think the standard list asks for, right? So everything Jane was touching on, we don't necessarily see the houses yet kind of laid out, even if it's just a suggestion and they're in flux. We're short some of that information at this point. A lot of that information, once it starts getting into the drawings, and I know that's you got to go further down the design path to start to land some of that, that's when we start to get comfortable accommodating the exceptions. At least on these, again, these denser neighborhoods, these empty nester conversations. I will say I do applaud the architecture. I appreciate what we're seeing already. Again, this is not something that you necessarily have to bring in at this point in the conversation, but this is helpful as well. The architecture off the cuff appears to be a good quality. Generally, the farmhouse concept is, obviously popular. It would go well. I might offer, relative to the architecture generally, that there is a consistency to the palette, which is nice on some regards, but at the same time, 30 of these in all the standard board and bat with all the standard coloration here is also going to get potentially sort of milquetoast, right, from one to the next. I might advocate for, when this is done well, there's also an element, and I know you have a little bit of it, but there's also an element of sort of a stacked stone, if you will, that integrates and might have a little more presence than you have at present. Just a sort of general preference. I actually appreciate, and I touched on it earlier, I appreciate that the lots are all varied and different. That'll actually give your neighborhood a lot of diversity. I am concerned that you're a little bit overbuilt to the point of the lots on the cul-de-sacs. Right, they feel awfully pinched at their front entry throat. Again, I could be convinced otherwise, but to convince me otherwise, that would start to be, we'd want to see some houses laid out on these lots, right, with some wherewithal about what will really land there. And I know that's a little bit, you got to cart before the horse, right? There's some flexibility with the buyers, but that's when this starts to become understandable, and I think we relax on the exceptions, if you will. I do think there's generally a commentary, obviously screening that the Farms Drive as you approach into the neighborhood, screening on that east side, things like that. I'm confident you guys will, those will all sort of be captured and picked up in the next steps. I do think Jane was onto something is there some measure of usable amenity that's a little bit different than, the retention ponds, and how does that work into this site in an effective manner so people feel connected to it and adjacent to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All really good comments. I appreciate the layout. I appreciate the architecture. You guys are headed down a good path. I think there's just refinement is all we're continuing to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Suplak. Mr. Fishman.
Wow. Okay. I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm going to be a little negative. First of all, if you read the minutes, we in our joint session, we had a discussion about just this kind of development. And we agreed that we were looking for green space, places people could walk and meet and so on. This to me is definitely too dense. Staff suggested that lots 1, 2, 18, 19, and 20 were problematic lots in our staff report. And if those were eliminated, and by the way, also the suggestion for this piece was 28 to 29 lots, and obviously we have many more than that. But if you eliminate those 5 lots, you actually have usable space next to the retention ponds, which would greatly improve the development. So I could never support this because we've seen it over and over again. And we've had, and by the way, the other thing is, as I ride my bike through Dublin's neighborhoods, the empty nester developments that we've approved so far, which I drive through, have big wheels, bicycles, and so on. And I think people buy houses they can afford and want to be in Dublin schools and want to be in Dublin. And so I think this will not be an empty nester, especially with 2-story houses, a community. I think there'll be children, and it is an infill lot, and I realize that, but I really feel it needs to be less dense, and it needs to have more walkable green space, because that's what Dublin's all about, and that's what people come here for. That's one of the things people come here for. Now, so I really feel, I think everybody else's comments were really good, but I really think that we need less lots. If you want these kind of size lots, we have less lots, which will have more space and green space within the development. And we talked about that the last meeting, green within the development, not relying on somebody else's development like Ballantree to furnish the green space. The other thing, I'm an architect and I listen intently to Mr. Semilak because he is, but to me, these houses look like the newest trend to be inexpensive, hardy plank, and the architecture to me is the garage doors. Okay, that's the garage doors really stand out in the architecture, and those garage doors will disappear eventually, and things will change. But I think that it could be fine tuned, and they look better than these pictures. But my concern is walking space, green space, eliminating these lots, and I think that staff's suggestion 1, 2, 18, 19, 20 are perfect. Because if those were eliminated, then you would have that desired green space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. So wrapping us up with the informal review, I concur with my fellow commissioners' comments. To try to keep it succinct, I would not be in favor of 6-foot minimum setbacks. We would have to have some type of discussion as we had before where, yes, 6-foot side setbacks could be allowed, but the minimum between the two houses needs to exceed 12. So for instance, a 6-8 split, something like that. If we're doing 3,000 square foot homes, I would want to see what the sizes are, because yes, in the staff report, it's called out that the minimum would be 0.15 acres and the maximum would be, I think it was 0.4 acres. But we all know that those 0.4 acres are going to be the corner lots where you couldn't not have a 4.4 acre lot just because of the shape of the lot itself, the corners and that sort of thing. So I agree with all of that. I think we have a lot of fleshing out to do. We learned our lesson. We look at Oak Park, even though there are a variety of houses and they have the 2-story model and the single story and that sort of thing, people go with bigger houses because the cost increment between buying a small house on the same size lot and a big house on the same size lot is incremental. And so people tend to go with those bigger size houses. And what we end up with are minimum setbacks everywhere, front setbacks, side setbacks everywhere. And I appreciate that the applicant is looking to lock down which housing types can be built on which lots, but the little tiny lots that are along the stretch, lots, let's see, 9 through 17 that all look the same. We talked about the variety of lot sizes, which we appreciate. Well, I think it's due to the shape of the lot and the way that the streets have to lay out to to essentially make as much usable space as possible, as much buildable space rather as possible. I agree, some need to be eliminated. I would like to challenge staff, not specific to this item, this informal review that we're looking at tonight, but to go back and look at our open space language. I know I brought up before, in my previous experience, we actually defined open space as usable, and we put in definitions so that we wouldn't have all of the open space on any particular parcel or any particular site or plat be just what's required for every other requirement, something that allows usability throughout the city. And so I share the concerns with the headlights going into lots 11 and 12. I don't want to belabor the point anymore. I think we have quite a bit of finessing, and I would love to see the next time we see this back some more details. We're looking at something even in an informal review, and it says it's going to have a minimum of 6-foot lots, a maximum of 60% lot coverage, and the lot sizes will be 0.15 to 0.4. I'd love the distribution. So if the applicant knows that certain lots are going to be locked down to certain housing types, then this is what it could be, and here's the minimum, here's the maximum. I'm not pleased with the overall application. But I think it's a great first step. So working together, I'm sure that we could come up with something that would be very, very pleasing. I understand that the applicant has this pretty much in their backyard. And so they also want something that would be pleasing, not just to them, but to the entire community. So again, I think it's a great first step, but I do think we have some work from here on out. So going back to the items that we're looking for, those 5 items to consider. Any other comments? I know, Jane, you raised your hand there, so I want to make sure that we call you out.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm so sorry about this reverberation.
Mark, you're echoing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm trying to figure out how to stop it. Is that better? Okay. One of the things that I think is important in these informal reviews is to try to give some some constructive suggestions on which direction you should go. And we've talked about some of the things that we don't like. I believe that this might be helpful. In this empty nester lot situation, most empty nesters are looking for particular things like lock and leave and not having to take care, having a low maintenance lifestyle and social connections and wanting proximity to things that bring them together with other people. That's an empty nester. This development is going to draw a lot more than empty nesters. But if empty nesters are what you're looking for, and we're looking for a variety of housing styles, and you want this density, I think you should maybe begin to think about reducing some of these square footages. And I don't know if you're familiar with the new trend of pocket neighborhoods, where you have small cottages, maybe even 1,200 square foot, small enough for a single divorcee or a widower or someone who is truly an empty nester living alone, that you could get more density on a smaller lot and arranged in a situation where the cottages look into a front green space that brings people together to talk and have a cup of coffee together, or that sort of thing. If you have a variety of partial sizes, you can have a variety of housing sizes as well that that meet the needs of the individual that's living in it. If they're singles, they might like to come together and have a more intimate neighborhood relationship within that particular 6 or 8 buildings. And the larger ones might have a larger space in their backyard for that kind of, the whole family, that sort of thing. I just think that we have to kind of urge you to move towards a neighborhood that has a cohesiveness within it, instead of relying that all of the activity will be in the backyards or outside of the development. We're hoping to create empty nester living, where if you don't even leave your development, you're already happy there. That's why I think in some of the EPCON communities, when they have the community pool or the community meeting room or exercise facility, it brings people together, and that's why they like it. They don't mind giving up their backyard because they have a main yard where they can have a conversation. So I would like you to mix the styles and the sizes up so that it has an intimacy that is different than what we see in these suburban developments. So I think it's really important that you understand what we're looking for. It's that we want a different product when it comes to these empty nester or denser developments that has a real lifestyle within it. So I thought that was important to share with you.
Thank you, Jane. All right, so looking back at the recommendation for review, there were 5 considerations, including the default, any other considerations that needed to be handled by the commission. Looking to you, applicant, have you heard what you need to hear tonight? Is there any, are there any specific questions?
Staff did.
No, I think we've gotten great feedback from a variety of perspectives, and So, which is exactly why we wanted to come to this. So we appreciate everybody's time and reviewing this. We initially we didn't anticipate doing an informal, so we actually have a pretty substantial packet that was already prepared around this site plan. And part of that probably didn't make its way back to you just because this is an informal. So I think we're going to be in a great spot to be able to bring some of those details back to you, incorporate a lot of your feedback as we move forward. So I didn't hear go away. I didn't hear anything like that. I heard things that we can actually respond to. So appreciate the candor and the direct feedback that you guys are giving. So we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your joining with us this evening. I know it's been somewhat of a long night, so thank you for your patience and thank you for contributing to the City of Dublin. We certainly appreciate it.
If I
Again, thank you all
add in
very
quickly,
much.
a couple things.
Mike King.
This is Mike King. This really is not an empty nester product. It's a transitional product from the larger 4,000 or 5,000 square foot houses in Ballantrae down to a mid-size house. Somebody who really does not want to live in a condominium and does not want to be under the condominium guideline, condominium rule. So it's more of an independent transition living. And also we certainly understand the open space and we know it's important. And we have our own open space here in our rear yard. And there's lots of open space throughout Ballantrae, but very little of it is used, especially in this day and age with social distancing. The idea of common area for social gathering, I think is a thing of the past, or will become a thing of the past. Just our thought, our feeling. Hopefully not, but transitional and walkability, I feel is very important, and some common area is absolutely important. So thank you very much for your time tonight. We appreciate all the input, and I think we have some ideas we can share with you the next time.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right. Again, thank you to the applicant for joining with us tonight. And at this time, we will move on to communications. So staff, do we have any communications for this evening?
We have received two pieces of communication not related to obviously any of the cases on the agenda. So I wanted to read them quickly, if I may. One is from a Dr. Reeve Brenner out of Rockville, Maryland. And it states that we asked that you take a look at bankshot.com for a play court servicing the needs of the differently able. See bankshot.com in connection with distant participation so important at the time of the virus. Our satellite office is in Cleveland and our fabrication is also in Cleveland. You might wish to check out the National Association for Recreational Equality. The underserved special communities will be the beneficiaries. And there is a phone number listed there as well. There are hundreds of Bankshot facilities all over the country. One of the parks, playgrounds, sports, and rec centers would do well in providing a Bankshot facility for the community. So I will put this into your OneDrive for tonight's meeting so that you have that reference.
Thank you, Claudia. And the second one?
The second one is from Mr. I'm going to butcher this name, Joseph Rasuya. He is at 5507 Classics Court in Dublin. And he states that he has raised my family in Dublin at the same residence for a total of 35 years. I just listened to the Commission's August 20th, 2020 meeting and felt compelled to write this letter, particularly concerning the segment on residential development patterns. It is alarming to me that the Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission would seriously utilize demographic trends for guidance in future development approvals, or as some of the members suggest, talk with experts like university professors who for the majority is what he meant, live in urban settings or associations funded by developers that put on seminars taught by volunteers. Please don't misunderstand me. I think that Claudia Husek His presentation was very timely. It points out a lack of vision and leadership that has prompted me to write this letter. Ms. Husek is asking for your guidance and is pointing out an alarming trend. Forget Dublin's quality of life and let's follow what home developers are saying. Their commission-based sales people are convincing home buyers to buy into the high density trend, so they must be right. They're even using demographics as a sales pitch. Higher and higher lot coverage means more profits. I recall in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the demographics pointed to a shortage in hotel space, so developers built more and more hotels, which led to a glut of poor quality hotels. Following Ms. Husek's presentation, your commission should have discussed how these recent approvals, Oak Park, Tartan Ridge, Autumn Rose, and Hamlet on Jerome, affect our quality of life. How do they affect our schools, existing property values, law enforcement, living in concert with natural environs, green views, access to health services and food services? Then following that discussion, you should be asking how to improve the quality of life in Dublin. Ms. Husek mentioned side-loaded garages with the web development. She stated how fast the Pulte development was sold out without high density. She also commented on empty nesters, of which my wife and I are, wanting HOA to take care of their yard. She did not say that empty nesters are wanting to give up their quality of life, especially in concert with nature, green views, at a time in their life when they have the free time to enjoy it. In closing, I am not against high density. Its place is in an urban setting where people can walk or access mass transit, and automobile ownership is almost non-existent. Mixing high density with the automobile will not keep Dublin green. Please look for ways that guidance can improve the Dublin quality of life.
Thank you, Claudia, for reading those. And that one you'll make sure to copy into Dropbox as well.
Yes, I will put both of those in Dropbox, and then certainly we are continuing that conversation in one of our future meetings here yet this fall. So we'll include that with that packet as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Sure. So to that second comment specifically, the first one sounded, it's always nice to have a reminder about different bodied people. And so that is a good reminder for us. But the second one specifically, I think we hit on kind of with our last item this evening. I know that we share that same concern. We do believe that there is a place for density. And I think that as a commission, we do a pretty good job at keeping eyes wide open as far as how any of these developments affect the residents and quality of life in Dublin. So thank you for copying those into Dropbox.
Sure.
Do we have any other communication this evening?
I do not, unless anybody else on the commission does, or Jenny, do you?
Mr. Grimes?
Just a comment. This WebEx, the audio periodically was kind of messed up. Hard to hear people, and I know when Thad couldn't hear the discussion earlier was an example of how. So I'm not a fan of WebEx. If this is it, I don't know if it was my computer or what, or everybody's experienced that at different times. But Zoom was better, and of course now I have had 3 examples. One other was through Google. So I don't know what's the problem with Zoom was, but it doesn't appear that WebEx is the answer. That's just
agreed. And Google is my least favorite also, maybe because my kids are on it all day. But we are in probably a weekly troubleshooting meeting with IT, trying to figure out different ways as to how to make this work, and having different types of technology and recreating issues, and it is nerve-wracking. So they have been doing a great job supporting us, and we're trying to reciprocate, and you never know what might go awry. So
I can appreciate that.
We keep working on it. Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah.
The only other call out that I have is tonight we had a couple of people who joined and their name was not their name. So Mr. King, for instance, joined with a different name, And also because we don't do the swearing in, state your name and address for the record because their names are presented. I think it might be to our advantage that it's 1 for 1. So if they're joining with their name on the screen, so that we can ensure that the public record is accurate with attributing the comments to the proper person.
That's a good point. And Mr. King had let us know that he was using his wife's device to speak while they were watching on his device. So we knew that the two of them were kind of sharing that, but frankly, I accidentally joined a wrong Zoom at 6:30 today because I had 2 on my calendar.
Well, additionally, even if there is a need for 2 people to join, to have both of their names listed, so-and-so King, and so that we can attribute it to the proper person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great point, Rebecca. I think the challenge with WebEx, so in Zoom, we can, sorry, Mark, I'll make sure to be quiet so you can talk. I think the challenge with WebEx is that we don't have the ability to rename people. So in Zoom, I can attribute who goes with what and rename them. So that's a challenge we're having, at least at this point with WebEx, is what you've done is a little different. We need to play around with that a little bit.
Yeah, and I wonder if we have the option as participants to rename ourselves. And so
I tried, I couldn't do it.
Even in the joining, if, we're asking applicants to join prior to the start of the meeting. And so if they're joined up with the wrong information, and as I'm doing this, I'm kettle because I am currently joined as our call. That's how I must have had my WebEx set up prior to today because I did not enter that today. But if they're joined up and the name is not appropriate, having to disconnect and rejoin in that, pre-meeting time period so that we make sure that the public record is accurate. So Mark, with that said, back to you.
So I'm gonna, how about this? I'm gonna want clarification moving forward. We don't have to solve it tonight, but that whole commentary about TCC and that bike path that basically runs adjacent to Muirfield Drive, which is sort of truncated. I guess I was caught off guard that isn't city path. I mean, that connects all the way up to Glick and over to Avery and through the neighborhoods, that type of thing. And of course, we had a very similar in the informal for Ashire Farms. We had a very similar kind of conversation where they're going to continue and extend the city path, bike path, right? So I think don't get me wrong, if it's Muirfield and that association that sort of changes that dynamic, that just caught me off guard. There are paths all around that are running up and down Dublin Road, that are running adjacent Glick Road, that basically run through Muirfield neighborhoods. I guess just a better understanding of that would be fruitful for us.
Okay.
So that, and then understanding we're advocates for connectivity into and to those networks of paths, right? But this one in particular, right? Even like you pick it, the OSU site, we advocated connect your site and your path network to our site and our path network type of thing, but we shied away from it here tonight. And if there's stipulations or things we have to understand, I think we should just unpack that a little bit.
And I share that concern. I know that one of the items for conversation potentially in the future, while maybe we can't do anything about the past, is when there is an adjacent to a public roadway, we need to have a public walkway. So almost every one of those Muirfield paths has a little sign on it that says, Muirfield residents only. And there is no adjacent path. So if I want to walk from my house up toward Glick Road, I can't, because either I'm walking in the road or I'm walking on a path that I'm not supposed to be walking on. There's no other alternative.
I can add some clarity to that.
Yes, please.
The paths in Muirfield are private paths and they're also privately maintained. The city does not maintain the Muirfield paths. They're on the perimeters, though, of Muirfield. Those are public paths. Muirfield Drive, the one that's in the road, that's a public path. The one on where is it? On Glick Road, of course, that's a public path. The Muirfield paths don't adjoin the public path on purpose. There's usually a way to get from the Muirfield path to the public path, but it's on purpose for liability and all kind of different reasons, and they're maintained just like it would be in a gated community where they have private paths. Our roads are public, but the paths are private, and the common area is private and maintained exclusively by the HOA.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Fishman. Where I struggle a little bit is because of the sheer nature of the size of Muirfield. For instance, from Brand to Glick, that's pretty much all north to south, that's all Muirfield. So if you want to get east to west somewhere there, then you can't without going on a Muirfield. You can either go all the way down to Brand and walk along Brand or through Brandon Way, or you can go all the way to Glick. But that's a mile and a half away. So you have to walk a mile and a half to connect up to a path that you're supposed to be on. And I understand, when Muirfield pays for something, Muirfield residents ought to enjoy it. But at the same time, taking away the walkability from the rest of the city to traverse an area, I don't think necessarily it's reasonable for a mile and a half walk out of the way to get to a path onto which you can continue.
The perimeter. I'm sorry. The Muirfield path is a public path. The Glick Road is a private is a public path. So all the paths that aren't in the neighborhoods are public paths. The only private paths are the ones that connect the neighborhood to the neighborhood.
Understood. So what I'm saying, for instance, an example, if you're anywhere west of Muirfield Village, but you're between Brand and Glick, and you want to get over to Coventry Woods, or you want to get over to, what is the one that is east of Dublin Road that's, oh man, beautiful brick homes. I'm forgetting, it's on the east side.
Donegal Cliffs.
Donegal, yes. So Donegal, you either have to go up Muirfield to Glick to over to down to get into Donegal. So you have to go around the perimeter, which is it's an 8-mile walk versus traversing anywhere in the middle, because Muirfield Village is very, very large. So I appreciate that the exterior paths are public and therefore you can walk in them. But because of the nature of the size of Muirfield Village, the perimeter, some people aren't able to walk 6 miles. And so therefore their option is, if they need to go from point A to point B and can't go through the middle, they have to drive.
Yeah,
Well, Lauren, I had heard that you're not asking for passports anymore. Is that true?
That's right. In other words, they're private paths, but I mean, you're not going to be arrested walking on Muirfield Path.
I had to bring my green card too, actually, not just my passport.
You're not going to be arrested. And the streets are all public. I mean, you can walk on the streets. The reason, another reason a lot of paths are private is that a lot of them run through people's backyards. A lot of the paths in Muirfield are not on the street; they're in the people's backyards. But I assure you that you probably won't be arrested or stopped or anything if you're walking through Muirfield. But the essence of it is we have to say they're private. The insurance company, I could be wrong now, it could have changed, but if somebody has an accident on one of our private paths, it'd be like somebody having an accident on your driveway, okay? And so there would be liability. And so that's kind of...
That's understood. That's understood. All right, yeah. Mark, did you have anything?
No, I mean, again, I was going to just go to like the OSU hospital site as a recent example. I guess I'm going to all the paths that they were putting on their site were private as well. But to the point of we still had, right, like we were still interested in connectivity into that network of paths and vice versa. But tonight we shied away from it, which was just interesting to me. And I was trying to discern what's the difference in the stipulation type of thing. And Again, Warren's right. They might not arrest you. They need to post the sign so they can liability say, hey, we posted the sign. Did you see it? Type of thing. I think there's just something to better understand here for all of us and how we continue moving forward. Because to Rebecca's point, this is not the last time we're going to sort of get a case that's adjacent or around Muirfield as big as it is.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Fox.
I really appreciate that, and the commercial areas in Muirfield are served by public. You can come off a public path. The shopping center, also what's the Morgan House, that's in Muirfield. Okay, but of course there's a public path that goes to it. So yeah, I think it was always the intent of Muirfield to have public paths to the commercial areas, like the hospital would be or whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Ms. Fox.
Yeah, I just want to bring something up when it comes to our further discussion about this whole density issue. And I know council's really interested in this. I would love it if we can come to a point in summarization of when and where we would allow extreme density. Like, what is the trade-off to that? Right now, I'm re-looking at the way that I love the fact that staff gave us all the questions to talk about. I think it's important. Developers use empty nesters as a catch-all, and then all of a sudden there's density, right? Where actually what it might be is just a lot of single-family homes on smaller lots, closer together. I think we need to get to a point where we say, okay, if we're going to grant density, these trade-offs, these amenities, these other conditions must exist before we say we're going to do that, whether that's a variety of housing, as Claudia, you mentioned in the planning report, whether that's a variety of housing sizes too, because density looks different when every house is 3,000 square foot, and it looks totally different if you have some that are 1,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot, 3,000 square foot, and arranged in a different pattern. So I would really love to see us continue the conversation broadly on when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, what are the trade-offs for it, and create some sort of guidelines for future planning and zoning commissioners so they don't have to walk this path again, like we're having to walk.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and we had toyed with this as well in terms of doing some mapping exercises for you all as to where are areas in town that we even have infill or leftover residential land. It's not that much.
Proximity, so frequency of these neighborhoods, I think, is something that be said, which I think you're touching on. Jane, I felt myself looking at this, the scale of the amount of units in this one. This was 30 some units. It's small by comparison to some other things we've seen. And so therein it's a little more agreeable. It's not an overblown whole neighborhood at massive density. I'm just touching on that aspect as well, that I think some of those stipulations we could probably start to land, because the bottom line is, and I think I touched on it, every time they come in, they're trying to sell us and they're trying to convince us, and we want to see a lot to be convinced it's right. We're very cautious and concerned about it. We want to see the architecture. We want to believe in the quality of it, right? Like, and it's far more than the list of stipulations on the standard development meetings, if you will.
And I apologize, everyone. I need to drop. So if there are further discussions, well, why don't we touch on those? If there are further discussions, otherwise, if we have direction for staff on other things that they want to bring, that we would like them to bring back in the future, I think we called a couple of those out this evening. So staff, if you could review those requests.
And, I mean, if you are all okay with us having an ongoing discussions here over the next couple of meetings or next couple of months, we would appreciate that for sure.
We definitely need to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and commitment tonight. It was a great meeting and we got a lot done in just a few hours that we were together. So thank you everyone and have a great couple of weeks until we talk next time.
Good night.
Good night. Great meeting.